Welcome to another episode of Trouble to Transformation. Today's guest, I have Jeremiah Wilber, founder of War Party Movement. After high school, Jeremiah enlisted in the U.S. Army, serving as a military police officer before earning his place among the elite Green Berets. Across multiple combat tours in Africa, Afghanistan, and Africa, one truth followed him everywhere. In every conflict, children suffer the most. Raised in the rugged lands of Montana, he became a hunter, a cowboy, and a protector shaped by purpose. Jeremiah carried that mission forward, working with global NGOs to rescue children from trafficking, slavery, and exploitation. From his earliest memories, Jeremiah Wilber watched his mother, a fierce Mescalero Apache warrior, stand in court to protect abused Indigenous children. He grew up at her side, helping rescue women from violence and children from unthinkable harm. Today, he uses his platform to confront the crisis facing women and children in America, dedicating his life to breaking cycles of abuse and empowering others to do the same. Jeremiah, thank you for being here. Your time, your experience, and your willingness to speak openly about the work that you do means a great deal. And the story and the legacy that you carry from your mother's work brings a depth and a truth that must be shared. So I'm hoping to get this message across all of my viewers and listeners. Because when I read your bio, I'm not going to lie, I actually got a little emotional. Well, not just a little, a lot.
Well, thank you, ma'am. I really appreciate that. That means a lot. Thank you for having me.
For sure. So did you want to just dive right in?
Yeah, I'm an open book. Whatever you want to talk about,
Okay.
I'm all for it.
Yeah, so your mother, what an incredible woman. What a legacy that she left behind. Let's start there.
Yes, ma'am.
What are some of your earliest memories?
Some of my earliest memories of my mom, I would say she was just like, one of those ladies who was just like really tough, rugged, obviously like very beautiful. And she did a bunch of modeling for two famous Western artists. One's name is Donald Putman, and the other one is Val Miller. And as a kid, what was really cool was I got to go, and I was probably maybe 2 or 3. I can't quite remember, 3, 4, maybe that age, but I have some pictures as well. But we would go to these photo shoots, and these guys would paint them, but they would dress in all the regalia and the attire. So, whether it was a native woman and a native guy, or it was like a mountain man or a cowboy and a native lady. So it was really cool. I got to kind of see that. And then all the people that they brought in to be these models, they did it in real life. So even like the white mountain man guys, like that's how they hunted. They hunted with flintlock. They're just Montana boys, and they're kind of live that style. And then, the native guys would show up on their horses and all the regalia, and it was like as authentic as they could get, for this. So those were some of the coolest memories, earliest memories. Like I remember my mother was just like combined with, how beautiful she was and the way she conducted herself, doing this. And then also just like working on the ranch, playing softball, just tough, just, chopping wood, hunting, just my mom was just kind of that tough, what you would think of like a rugged, like Montana gal, just getting it done.
Yeah, I did see some pictures in your profile, and she was stunning, absolutely stunning. But however, there was another side too. She was an absolute warrior. And when I read that one post where one of your memories as a 5-year-old, when she went into that house with a baseball bat, and then came out with an infant and a young native woman in tow. Wow, that was incredible.
Yeah, my mom was always, I would say, my mom and my dad were always like really big on like, doing the right thing, sticking up for people, sticking up for yourself. And my mom, I think like mostly through like church work, if I kind of remember right, would just got involved with just like, find out something was going on. And then she was like, okay, if you ever need anything, call me type of situations. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember one time we had this little red like Honda Civic, and it was snowing and cold outside. And like I said, my mom, I remember that bat because I think my brother, I think still has that bat. I mean, it's, it's older than I am, but my mom played softball and she had this red softball bat. And I remember she grabbed her bat and jumped in the car, and then we kind of drove through to some trailer park or something. And
Mm-hmm.
my mom went in there, and I heard some like yelling and stuff going on and wrestling around or whatever. And then my mom came out with the baby, and a lady got in the car, and we took her to a church. And, that was just like kind of, normal to me to see my
Mm-hmm.
parents both like getting into scuffles, or, my dad was always, getting in fist fights or doing stuff, kind of over my mom and the kids. I mean, it was kind of, people don't realize, like being half native and white, in the 80s in Montana, like it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
exactly easy, for any of us, like my dad got it from the Indians, and my mom, so it was like a very gritty, scrappy family. And I always really remember that about my mom. And like I said, just her willingness, like she wasn't scared of anybody, like she didn't care. She had, older brothers, that kicked the snot out of her, and she grew up,
Mm-hmm.
right outside the res, and, just always had to deal with, being tough and being bullied, and that kind of thing. So I think that, seeing that at a young age, and really understanding that, and then having both my parents like really coaching me and guiding me along to really have that warrior spirit
Mm-hmm.
to stick up for myself. My mom used to say, like, the warriors would say, today's a good day to die. So, like, almost just like, I love you, my mom would say that, like, today's a good day to die. And what that means is, like, I'm right with the creator, I'm right with my family.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if today's it, then it's it. So, when you live every day like it's like that, then you're able to basically, live your life to the fullest, and you're, able to live for other people, and, serve, have those sacrifices, because you're not living this like very singular life, because you have to be right with your creator and your family to be able to feel that, so, I think just being raised with that mentality. And then, my dad was just this awesome mountain man, and like hunting and skiing, and, always outside working, playing. My dad was in the army, and, so like I really, from a young age, that warrior mindset, everybody I was around were these really tough, gritty men, cowboys, veterans, whether they were, native and non-native, um, and then, my mom, doing that. And then me just having to stick up for myself so much, getting bullied and beat up, and, just
Mm-hmm.
nonstop as a kid, being, mixed, was a big deal in Montana, part of my childhood, on, from, like I said, from the Indian kids and from, white kids. So I think, looking back on all those things, it was such a blessing to be able to pretend I was this like little mountain man, like this half breed
Mm-hmm.
mountain man kid. And, through books, we didn't even have a TV till I was a teenager. And I've seen movies and stuff, but my mom always read a lot of books to us, and a lot of stories. And my favorite books and stories I was always interested in were, like Kit Carson and the other mountain men, and learning through history about warriors and natives, and just I just consumed nothing but like those type of stories and men. And then I was outside, playing all day. My grandma made me like buckskin and, like fur. If I shot a coyote or something, my grandma made me a fur
Mm-hmm.
hat out of it. And I mean, if you saw me on a regular day when I was like 8, probably from the time I was like 3 to like, I don't know, I was probably going into junior high, I was either like full cowboy or like dressed like a mountain man, buckskin, little Indian
Mm-hmm.
kid. And, that's just who I thought I was. And I love that. And I think that, like, not jumping ahead so much, but, full circle after like retiring from the army, the biggest thing that's helped me is like being that little kid again.
Yeah.
So, it's really cool to think about, to be able to be in the position I'm in, to be able to like, pursue that and be that like 8-year-old kid running around in buckskins, and, trying to be a cowboy, or, pretending I'm a mountain man, so those things are super cool. Um, yeah, but that's basically kind of my early childhood in a nutshell, and that heavy warrior mentality. And, everything we ever attended to was either like we went to church, went to rodeos, and we went to powwows. So it was like those were kind of the big events as my childhood. Um, so those things I always think stand out as being pretty powerful, especially the way me going wanted to go into the military in that warrior mindset. And then, both of those, they honor veterans in such an amazing way, like everything they do at the rodeos, everything they do at the powwows, they're the first guys to enter. So I just remember that. So it was like always the way the veterans were treated, and how much my family depended, and like all our like friends and immediate family, my grandfathers, everybody was like this soldier, was a warrior, they went to war. And I think that was like really heavy and meant a lot to a lot of those warriors, because there was a difference between like just being a soldier in the army or just being a regular person, and then these guys who actually went to war. So I was surrounded by a lot of that. And so as an early childhood, especially in Montana, that was what was really heavy, as far as influencing me. And a lot of, like, I would say, determination and grit, from having to push through a lot of the, I was a really angry kid. I was a mean, angry kid because I fought all the time. And I just had to have that reputation, like I used my body as like a weapon. I didn't care, and it was just, if I showed any weakness, they were going to get me anyway. So doing that, and then being this pretend soldier, or this pretend mountain man, and, not having a ton of friends, just getting it done. And then, my little brothers, my youngest little brother is 6 years younger than me, my next brother. So I was a lot older than him. But yeah, that's kind of that Montana life in a nutshell. Sorry, I'm kind of rambling there, but
Oh God, no,
um,
no, no, no. That was some of my questions. Is some of your earlier influences in environmental culture and family. And have you ever heard the Aristotle quote, "Bring me the 7-year-old, and I will show you the man"?
yes, I have.
Yeah, and that really stood out to me because like our earliest experience is what shapes us. And that's where, like I'm not going to jump ahead myself either, but we're going to get into that even with like the violent offenders.
Hmm.
When you are raised in violence and chaos during all of those human development stages, your fate is molded. And it sounds to me, what I heard is that you had a lot of really strong people, warrior spirit that were doing good work.
Yeah,
Do you think
absolutely.
that that was your saving grace? Do you think things could have went the other way for you?
Um, yeah, I mean, no, not looking back on it,
Hmm.
because, looking at how I felt at the time or what was going on with me at the time, no, my mom and dad were amazing,
Hmm.
and, I was also, it's kind of funny. I know it's not like exclude white people, but through my life, what I've found out is that like the term like auntie and uncle, or like tio and tia, if you speak Spanish, it's
Hmm.
like almost every brown person I've ever met in my life, like black people, uncles and aunties, and Hispanic or natives, Samoans, Hawaiians. Um, and I haven't seen that. And the reason why I say white people, that I haven't seen
Hmm.
that as much. But for me, everybody that was immediately surrounding me, my family, there's people I didn't know were not my real uncle until I was like,
Hmm.
I don't know, like a 30s, or something. Or like, how are we related again? Um,
That's funny.
and I say that because,
Mhm.
you know, it takes a village to raise a child, that saying. But I look at it as like, we all need a village, even as adults, we need to be a part of this, a part of a village. So I was
Yes.
just really blessed to also have, so many amazing role models that were very family oriented into that.
Mhm.
And I think one of the biggest things of kind of that warrior code was all my cousins, my uncles, everybody stuck up for each other. Everybody kind of had that mentality, like would fight for each other. My older cousins would show up, and we'd, get in fights and beat up guys that beat me up and things like that. And that was how my family rolled, even though, we're separated by, states or cities or whatever. But I also had that same kind of environment with a lot of other people that I didn't know were my real aunties or didn't know were my real uncles. Um, so I think that's a big, heavy impression on me, and then how I move forward in life as a father, as a friend, as an uncle to other, people. I always take those lessons from my mother and my dad, and it was like at the time I didn't realize, a lot of people associate it with just pure natives, but like my dad had the same kind of code and like that cowboy code
Yeah.
of, if it's a lady that's like your age, you treat her like a sister. If she's younger than you, you treat her like she's one of your nieces,
Right.
or if it's a lady that's older than you, you treat her like an auntie. If she's like a grandma, then you treat her like she's your grandma, and you address her as such, and you address them like that. So I think that was like heavy on me to see my dad treat the way he treated my mother, the way he treated other women, the way my dad, my sister, when my sister was born, it was like she's the princess, and like entire life, to this day, it's like she could do no wrong, even if she did wrong. It was like,
Yeah.
my brothers and I could beat the crap out of each other. We get a little bit of trouble, if we even yelled at my sister or something, we definitely get it. So I think that was just such a huge impression, that big family life, and the way that everyone I was around really protected and looked out for each other. And more importantly, the ladies, the women that were in our family were also very powerful, but they were also looked out for, when the men were around. So I think that was huge and very influential on my life, to have that impression, that like I said, that kind of cowboy code and that like native way of thinking of how you treat, your elders and others around you.
Yes, we need more of that now, don't we?
Yes,
Because
ma'am.
that's what I'm finding too, like even with the clients that I work with, when they're finished treatment and recovery, they have to go back into the family dynamics, which is the same place that made them sick in the first place. Right. So it is so important to have strong family values, but I'm finding there's less and less of it, which is a kind of a scary concept, really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I totally agree.
Yeah. Now, kind of going back to your mom, though, she actually dedicated her life in helping rescue abuse victims, women and children, right?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
dive into that a bit.
Yeah, so I told you that story when I was young, and then
Hmm.
a few years later, I was probably, I don't know, 8 or 9 maybe. Um, and my mother and my father both. My mom was kind of the one who removed the kids at first,
Hmm.
and then my dad, ended up. If I remember the story, I wasn't there. I was at the house once, and my mother was like, "We're leaving." Took me away, went back, got the kids, and then my dad showed up. But I remember the bigger part I remember was it was a foster family, and it was a family that we went to church with, and they had foster kids and they had a bunch of native kids. So my
Hmm.
mother was always big of like, she's like a detective, she wants to know about those native. Well, why does this white lady have these native kids? Like, how are they, what's going on,
Hmm.
or how are they being treated?
Yeah.
And not anything in racist way of just like, hey, these little native kids, my mother is also like, hey, they need to be around some of their culture or be around. So my mom would like to
100%.
be, you know, so she just noticed things, and they were heavily abusing those kids. And my father found out.
Hmm.
So they, testified in court. I remember that being like a big thing, them going to court and doing that. And then from there, it just like, it was always, something was going on where my parents, in particular, my mother was involved in helping women, helping people, helping kids, and then that would continue on, and then as when I got older, I can't remember exactly when my brain's a little foggy. Um, I know I went to high school, in junior high and high school in Las Vegas. My dad my dad was just a blue collar guy, cowboying and working at the talc mine, guiding elk hunts. I mean, just your typical kind of cowboy, trying to get it done in Montana, in the area we grew up, we're in, and in the Madison Valley. So my dad went up to Havre, and he was in the National Guard at the time, and he wanted to put himself through nursing school. He wanted to become a flight nurse.
Hmm.
My dad in the Army became a medic, and then kind of got the taste of, some flight medical stuff, and was like, and learned about it, about being a flight nurse. So he put himself through college. And then once he worked in the hospital for a while and got his qualifications done, he got a job working for Flight for Life in Las Vegas. So we moved to Las Vegas, and it wasn't like the best neighborhood, but it wasn't the worst. Now it's really, really ghetto, but we moved there in the 90s. And it was a culture shock for sure, living where I lived in Montana and then going to, going to this city, going to Las Vegas. But it was a cool, really cool area because it was kind of where like the ghetto met the newer suburbs, but also older suburbs. And then there was like up on the mountain, it's where a lot of rich people lived. And it was kind of where everything, newer stuff was getting put up for a little while, but it was the east side of Las Vegas. But a lot of the families and people that lived there, kind of moved up. A lot of them moved out of the ghettos, if you will, out of North Las Vegas and things. So it was a very rough area. But at the same time, I'm not trying to say like, I grew up in the slums or anything like that either. We had a lot of people who had like, a lot of the Mexican, like the vaqueros all over the place, had horses and stuff in my neighborhoods. And, there was lots of gang life and, heavy cartel and heavy gang affiliations, black and brown gangs. And it definitely had I would say, my high school years, I had a lot of dangerous things that happened to me and stuff related to the gangs. But I also, I'm grateful for those things. And the way I grew up in Montana first with my, not being scared to fight people, not being, being able to stand up for myself. Those things really paid off, being in those type of environments, because weakness, I think, is worse than not sticking up for yourself, at least in that time, in the 90s. If you showed weakness, you're definitely going to get messed with more.
But then if you fight back, you might actually recruitment too, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of issues with that. But I was, kind of getting that a part of my, my father's story and who my parents were, because that leads into my mother, where we kind of transitioned into Las Vegas. And my mother, worked a lot at I believe it's Northern Paiute, but there's a Paiute, there's a Moapa Indian reservation outside Vegas. And then there's a Arapaho Indian community. So my mother always did a lot to try to like stay involved with the Native community, and in particular, once this MMIW stuff really started to, I would say, my guess and my theory is that it's been happening since the advent of reservations, and before that. But when the popularity of it, or when people started realizing and getting some light shined on it, wasn't until the mid 2000s. So my mother was kind of one of the first people I ever heard like talking about it. And then, all through, I left for the Army right after I graduated high school, but all through while I was gone, my mom and dad would always take vacations every summer. They would jump on the Harley and they would spend all, I want to say it's July, but they would spend almost a month just powwow season. So they'd be up in Montana, South Dakota, North Dakota, Wyoming, kind of just all over, traveling the powwows with friends and praying with people and doing ceremony and just I don't know, I don't know how to explain it. Just enjoying their life, being on vacation. And it was really cool because, even my dad would be, it's funny because like my dad, this old white guy with a beard, or mustache and on his Harley, and somebody's like, who the hell is the white guy putting up teepees, or was he, and everyone's like, that's Uncle Rick. Like no one messes with Uncle Rick, once they find out who my dad is. And that was really cool to grow up in that way too, with the Native community. So it was like, as much as I was saying that, I got razzed or fought or other things, it's deeper than that, because, and a lot of people don't know that. It's like, where we were out in Montana, it was it was like Assiniboines and Grovons, and it was like, if me and my friends ran into a bunch of Grovon kids, we were gonna get our asses whooped. Or if
Mm,
like we ran into like two Grovon kids, there was a bunch of us, like we were gonna whip their ass. So
mm-hmm.
it was this very like weird kind of dynamic between some of the families and the tribes that were located where we were, um, and so I was playing into that because there's some of that, but then there's also where like the Assiniboine families and people, brought my dad in just like he was native, and treated him as such.
Yeah.
And he was an uncle to to them and to their kids and whatnot. So, um, I was this cool melting pot
Mm-hmm.
of how I grew up. And then ultimately, you kind of fast forward to my adulthood, my whole family has been that way. My brother's, married to a Hawaiian girl, and my
Mm-hmm.
sister's married to a Northern Paiute, and
Mm-hmm.
my little brother, is married to a Moroccan girl. So it's like, we've always had this like family dynamic um, of from the way my parents treated other people
Mm-hmm.
and accepted people. My mother was really big on like the colors of the medicine, what they represented, and
Mm,
it
yeah.
doesn't mean a lot of different things. But my mother's biggest interpretation of what she always preached to us was that it
Mm-hmm.
represents all the colors of the people of the world. And she
Yes.
would talk about the prophecy of the seventh generation, and how that like, and when you read the teachings and famous things that a lot of our elders and these great leaders, these great war chiefs and warriors talked about, was about, this, everybody is the same. Like it stopped being this red versus white thing to them as they got older and wiser, and could kind of see it from a different perspective of what was going on with modernization
Mm-hmm.
in our country. So I think that, it's a very nuanced subject.
Yeah.
However, that was something that was really important to my family, to my mother, to accept everybody, and that was my favorite thing about serving in the military, where it was,
Mm-hmm.
all walks of life, colors, creeds, religions, just brothers doing the same thing. No one cared of where you're from, what your skin color was, none of that. So
Yeah.
that was definitely how I was raised. And I think that, fast forward into where I'm at with my life and how I treat War Party and what I try to do is, rooted in my mother's teachings of that with people.
Yeah, super blessed to have been able to have those teachings too. I've been very fortunate too to have some very close Indigenous friends that have invited me to ceremony, sweats, and whatnot. And I'm just about to be adopted into one of the Indigenous communities
That's
here.
awesome.
Yeah,
That's
I'm pretty
amazing.
excited about it. Yes, I might come on board as a counselor for them, and also a workshop facilitator. I'm actually going to do a grief and loss uh, workshop here next week.
Okay, that's
So
awesome.
if you have any pointers for me, please, I'd be all ears, right? Because it's a huge learning curve. Like even with just the vocabulary that we use, there's just certain things that we're, as a white person, we're a little ignorant to.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I think that that's, you don't, that old saying, like, you know what you know, you don't know what you don't know. And
Mm,
it's hard. And a lot of it's individuality. It's
yeah.
how sensitive people are or not sensitive, or what they
Mm,
think of. And I always, my family's super funny. And I think humor has been something that like we've always used. So I never was around uncomfortable situations
mm,
or goof up, or you say something the wrong way and we laugh. It was
mm,
like, it's funny,
mhm.
it was, oh, this, or, like my mom called my first time she met my wife. And I mean, she still did until she passed away. Like, was she Shawia, like
Right,
the white woman. So like but it wasn't in like a derogatory
right.
way.
Yeah. Mm,
Um, so I think that, that is depends on the people that you surround yourself with, or
true.
that are there.
Yeah, true.
And then also, like you said, it's a blessing, it's something, it's very honorable, and just staying humble and learning, and, you don't know what
Mm,
you don't know. And,
yeah.
it's okay to say, I don't know that, or what was that again? Or,
Yes.
whatever.
Yeah, and it's interesting because one of my exes, who is like a childhood friend, and we're still friends to this day, he was part Native. So I totally understand that bullying because you're not white, but you're not fully native, so you don't really fit in on either side sometimes. And it's just interesting because his mother was native and his dad was a guide as well, an old guide back up in Fort Nelson, if you're familiar with the Fort Nelson, BC area.
Hmm.
And so it's just really cool to kind of see some of your photos too with the pack trips and
Oh, yes, ma'am.
whatnot. And
Yeah,
yeah,
heck yeah.
yeah, and it's just I love the blend of the two worlds, right? Because the horsemanship, the land, the hunting, I mean, that lifestyle is very important to me. I think that those skills are like they're just next level. And maybe to you they come easily because you started as a young kid, but I've been on a pack trip before and wow, that is some serious skill to take horses and riders.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
and you know, and I would say this to everybody, and I try to be very open with it on my social media. Um, and I'll lead with this. You know, it's kind of funny. We have three rules in special forces,
Mm,
and rule number one is always look cool. Rule number two is always know where you're at, and rule
mm,
number three is if you don't know where you're at, revert back to rule number one. So in that, you know, always look cool. And when we look at, you know, special forces operators, one of the things I would always look at guys and be able to see was if it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, it's probably a duck. If you
right.
see a guy that, you know, he's standing there, he's got the jawline or, you know, the beard and the muscles and the tattoos, and you look at his gear and his gear is squared away, it looks,
Mhm,
everything looks functional. I mean, he just looks like an operator.
mhm.
That guy, I'm not going to say he, you know, but if it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, it's
Yep.
probably a duck. The
Right.
guy that looks sloppy, that's gear is sloppy, that's not tightened up, looks like a duck, walks like a duck, talks like a duck. So for me, when it comes to being a cowboy, it was something that, yes, my grandfathers were, you know, such an influence
Hmm.
on, you know, my grandfather being, you know, a buckaroo and that's a hone ranch. I mean, my grandmother's last name is Hancock. Like,
Hmm.
you know, there's horses after my family, and
Hmm.
and that was like not gonna say removed, but when we moved from Montana to Las Vegas, anything that I was doing as this little mountain man kid, you know, with my dad, with my grandpas, with my uncles, you know, I didn't get to do that anymore. So I joined the army, and when I retired from the army, the biggest thing I wanted to do was like, I knew that I had to recreate myself. Like I can't, you know, it's like being a professional athlete where and it's hard for people to understand. It's like I operated at the most elite level that there is, and
Hmm.
I walked among these giants, and now I'm just this like regular guy at the grocery store, you know, like no one knows who you are, no one cares what you did. And my favorite thing about leadership and the way I, you know, still today is no one cares what you've done in the past. It's about what you're doing right now. You could have been the best soldier the Army's ever seen 10 years ago, but right now, if you're just a shitty leader right now, you're just a shitty leader. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
So I've always looked at that of like, I have to push myself to continue to be the best version of
Hmm.
what I am. And the entire time, who I was a Green Beret. It was a soldier.
Yeah.
And I was as professional as I could possibly be. Every single thing I did was to be the best, to my physical fitness, my training in the gym, boxing, wrestling, whatever I was doing was to be the best soldier I could be. And I knew I needed to replace that with something. And in a way to like, who am I? You know, who was that little kid, you know? And that was a cowboy. I wanted to be a cowboy my whole life. That's, you
Yeah.
know, what I wanted. And so I just got out of the army and I chased it. And the first kind of opportunity I got is I went to a guide school in
Hmm.
Du Bois, Wyoming. And I learned how to, um, you know, run pack strings, become a hunting guide. And, what cool part about this family was their camp was 20 miles into the wilderness. You
Hmm.
know, you're 8 or 9 hours, you know, on a horse just to get
Hmm.
there. You know, it's a wilderness, so you can't use chainsaws and, you know, no electric, nothing. So everything
Right.
has to be
Yep.
from hand. And it was like the first time, you know, that I was just like, man, this is where I belong, you know, like this is really who I
Yeah.
am.
Yeah.
Um, the mountains, the Wind Rivers, you know, those people, the Shoshone people who live there, the Shoshone sheep eaters,
Hmm.
they're kind of also like the people who came right out of the mountains and on the horse and became Comanche. And then, but the ones who lived in the mountains and kind of stayed in that area, they used ram's horns, bows, and they ate sheep and they chased sheep. And they were kind of the short, stocky native. But where we're at was where they're, where they lived. And it's really cool. You can go up on like rock crops and see like arrowhead chippings and,
Wow.
imagine like this guy sitting up there pulling security, looking over the village, sitting on his little spot and stuff. And it was just this place where it got me back into the mountains again. And it wasn't that I didn't do the mountains, and we can get into my military career, but it was the first time like that I was able just to release, like just on this horse. And it's just quiet. It's just me, I'm just riding, it's just me and the creator. And that was when I could feel it, and I always tell my friends, and my friends have been in there in the Wind Rivers and there, and it's like, it's different, man. Like you feel it, you feel the creator in there. And if you can't like, like you need to get right with yourself, or you're not allowing that, you need to go tie some tobacco to the tree, bro, and talk to them about it.
I love
So
that.
it was got me into, got my foot in the door, because I didn't know how to like even, lope on a horse or trot a horse very well, ride a horse great, but I could ride in the mountains, and I had a good balance, and it taught me a lot. And the terrain there was super rugged.
Yes.
I learned how to really pack really well, very efficiently. So then I got my foot in the door, and then I just kept chasing it from there and looking for people to mentor me, and opportunities, which grew into, getting invited out to ranches and learning how to work, and which eventually turned into, be actually now, have my own horses and day working on big outfits and trying to be an asset, to the ranchers and the families that I'm working for. So, but sorry, I didn't mean to digress there, but
No, I love the experience because, like through you, I'm living vicariously as well, right?
yeah.
And what is your longest time up in the mountains on a pack guide?
The longest I've been out away from town is I spent 27 days.
Ooh, that's a long one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
cool.
Mine
It was
is
amazing.
10. Yeah.
Nice.
And the thing is though, like, it like you said, it's rugged. It is rugged terrain, and being in the saddle that long, and then sleeping too, sleeping on a cold old ground, like the cold just
Yeah.
goes right through your bones. Like the next morning is, you got to kind of get warmed up, can't even move.
Yeah.
But and to think that people, that was their life, like that's how they
Yeah.
lived, our
Yeah.
ancestors.
And I love that, because, that's how I grew up, was like just building forts, building shelters, doing that. When I did in the army, in SEER school and survival school. And, I just felt like everyone's like, dude, like I was like everybody's expert. And I was like, I've been doing this since I was like, since I can
Yeah,
remember,
yeah.
learning tricks and mountain man stuff and
Mhm,
elk hunting and, sleeping in the snow and
mhm.
all of that. So, and then progressing through things I did in special forces,
Yes.
it was just like, I love that. So being on a pack trip, it's
Mhm,
always really cool to have all these like cool tricks and building stuff and doing things. People are like, what the heck? And, I
mhm.
can show you how to not be directly on the cold hard ground, and you don't have to pack a bunch of stuff. And,
Yeah.
that to me is like that skill. And like you said, these people
Mhm,
did that, and it's like, yeah, well, this is what they did. Those to me are, those skills and traditions that
mhm.
I think are heavily overlooked in just modern society in
Yeah.
general. In particular, a lot in the Native community. What I see in the Native community on social media is so much of the quote unquote traditional stuff would be like the regalia they're wearing, the songs they're singing, which I agree with. Those are amazing and those are all important things.
Mhm.
But it's like, how many of you are still hunting? How do you know how to track an
Mm.
animal? How do you know how to catch
Yeah.
horses and ride horses and train horses? And how many of you, all those skill sets, I think, is what made, who we were as people.
Yes.
And the farther you get away from nature, the farther you disconnect from these
Agreed.
special animals that the creator made for us, the horse and the dog. It's like, I feel
Mhm.
like you start to, it's very easy to keep living even more singular and more singular and more singular, and not worried
So
about
true.
others, you
Yeah.
know. And being a part of a team, that's my favorite thing about cowboying and horses is like,
Mhm.
we're a team, we're teammates. Yes, I'm the team leader, but this is my teammate,
Yeah.
and we need to be able to trust each other and look out for each other and build that bond and that
Mhm.
relationship together. And you know, that to me is why, like, every time my foot hits the stirrup, like, I feel like I rewind 200 years. It doesn't matter. Like, yesterday I was riding in an arena and I feel
Nice.
weird in the arena. I don't know where to go. I'm just trying to, I'm like, there's so much
Yeah.
space, but
Yeah.
I still feel, I still get that
Yeah.
connection. And people say, horse medicine. I
Mhm.
feel that, deep in it. It's super cool. So
Yeah.
anyway, longest way to get to, I started packing in the Wind Rivers first, kind of got
Mhm.
my foot in the door, and then just chase these mentors, people I would see, whether it was social media or through the grapevine. Hey, there's a cowboy down in Pie Town, New Mexico. He said, yeah, he'd bring you on. And okay, yes, sir. I don't know what I'm doing. And a
Yeah.
lot of people, I think, in the Western community respect me so much because I was a Green Beret.
Yes.
And I think that they're willing to take me on because maybe in their mind, it's kind of what I'm thinking is like, well, he might not know how to ride, or maybe he is what he is, but I know he's going to be
Mhm.
tough. He's not going to
Yeah.
complain. Like
Yeah.
it can
Yeah.
handle it.
Yes.
And having that mentality of just being a student of the game and just being
Yeah.
okay with, hey, sir, I don't know how to do that, um, helped me really reset because when I was in the Army, I was a team sergeant of special forces. I was in charge of all this stuff. I was in charge of so much. And everybody relied on me to have the answers and give the guidance and do that. So one of my favorite thing about the school environment of the military was like, you mean I'm not in charge? I don't have to tell anybody what to do. Like I just do what
Mhm.
they tell me and do that as hard as I can, full retard into that as hard as I can. Easy. That's
Yeah.
what I've been doing all my life. And cowboying is the same way. It was like, hey, I don't know how to do that, sir. I'm just taking guidance and soaking up from them. And it was, I think, what I really needed to help, I guess, reinvent myself, if you will, or find myself, who I really am. Um, how, what am I, now that I'm not a Green Beret anymore? I'm a dad and I'm a
Mhm.
cowboy and that's, but at the same time, I use the term cowboy loosely. I'm not this badass cowboy who lives on a ranch and can rope and ride anything. And, I want to be really handy one day and good at those things. But, the truth is, I'm just, I got a horse and learning the day work. I'm out trying to help people. I'm trying to get better. And
Mhm.
I want to be able to, compete in ranch rodeos and do
Mhm.
different things in my life. But, I also want to like bring my kids along. My daughter loves it. My youngest
Mhm.
daughter loves it. And I want to get her involved with it. And, but, yeah, but like I said, I use the term cowboy loosely. I really want to
Mhm.
honor those guys that get it done every day. I have a
Yeah.
lot of my friends, a lot of my work for.
Mhm.
It's a lot different when you live on the ranch and you're taking care of. You're really a true stockman, a true cowboy in a sense.
Yes.
I'm kind of like I have a joke. I say I'm a National Guard cowboy. I do it 1 week in a month and 2 weeks in
Mhm.
the summer. Um, but
That's funny. Yeah, and it's interesting because well, the oil field is definitely not the military.
mhm.
However, the men that we hired for those positions, it was always the cowboys and the
Yeah,
farmers.
roughnecks. Yeah,
Yeah, they really excelled in that industry because yeah, they knew how to get the job done. So what I'm hearing too is like all of those cowboy and those guiding skills that you obtained all throughout your life, and then really helped you excel in the military. And now we take your mother's legacy of rescuing women and children out of abusive situations. And then, bam, here we are, where now you're rescuing international stuff like the working for NGOs, is it? Non government
yes, ma'am.
organizations, rescuing women and children from trafficking and stuff. Like,
Yes, ma'am.
wow, incredible work.
Yeah. When I so kind of the abridged version of the
Mhm.
military was I did 22 years in the Army. I started out as military police. I did
Yes.
that for about 8 years.
Hmm.
I was also a drill sergeant during that time. That was one of my most rewarding, coolest jobs I ever did. Um, and then right after I got done being a drill sergeant, I knew I didn't want to go back to the regular Army. I didn't want to be an MP anymore. I had went through some pretty high level patrolling school, really hard schools. I went to Sapper school and a Ranger school, kind of back to back.
Hmm.
And I excelled at both of them when I was there. And it was the first time, I was always around. I was always like could run the fastest, had the highest scores, shot the best, and I underestimated myself for a really long time when I was in the regular Army. Even though my leadership saw more in me, or people would, hey, this race is coming up. You want to do it? Yeah, I would do everything extra. Like I said, I wanted to be the best soldier. But the reality is like, the Sergeant E5 version of me, looking at the E7 version of me, I never would have thought that was ever possible. I've never even saw a guy walking around in his uniform that looked like that. And so I never thought, Special Forces could be anything, in my career path. But when I went to Sapper school, I went there with some guys that were Green Berets. I had 2 guys from Ranger Battalion and 2 guys that were Green Berets. And all of them were like, what are you doing here, man? You're an MP, and it was kind of funny. And it was kind of the first time I got to measure myself against these elite guys. And I was like crushing them. It was funny. They called me Superman, and then they were like, we found Superman's kryptonite. I can't swim. I'm not a very aquatic. I grew up in Montana. Like I'm not, yeah, I was in the lake and the river, but like to my waist, bro. And, so on Lake Day, I failed the lake swim, and they just thought it was hilarious. They were like, we found Superman's kryptonite. So I had to like learn how to swim before I went to Ranger School, because there's a pretty heavy swim eval in that. But I went there, and again, it was another being around more guys from Ranger Battalion, more guys from Green Berets, and being able to hold my own and teach them things. And my military career mattered. My experiences in combat that I had as an MP, the skills I learned at Sapper School, my leadership from being a drill sergeant, really helped me excel at Ranger School and help guys and help, be a good Ranger buddy to guys. So right after then, I was just like, man, this is what I joined the Army for. This is like, when I was a kid, this is who I thought I was going to be. It was this badass dude, with camo on his face, hunting bad guys, jumping out of airplanes and shooting bad guys in the face. And so I went to selection to become a Green Beret and become Special Forces. And I served in 3rd Special Forces Group, and I also served as and 3rd Special Forces Group. My specialty was an 18 Echo, which is communications, Special Forces communications. And then when I went to 10th Special Forces Group, I became a team sergeant in 18 Zulu, and I was in charge of how do I say it without. We were in charge of countering Russian aggression above the Arctic Circle. We were a specialty was a mountain team. When I was in 3rd Group, my specialty was on a reconnaissance team. Which include a lot of urban environment stuff. So it's kind of the first time I was a little bit outside of, what I've done, but I love the mountains. You did a lot of mountaineering and stuff in Sapper School and Ranger School and whatnot. I didn't ski. I skied once with my dad when I was like 7. My dad was a great skier, learned to ski in Alaska when he was in the Army. But I didn't ski. We moved from Montana and, didn't ski again. And we didn't have money to go skiing all the time, when we lived in Montana. So I learned to ski when I was 36 years old. And typical Special Forces fashion, who's the best in the world, we'll find them. They sent me out to the Olympic Training Center, and I learned to ski from a girl who won multiple silver medals in the Olympics. So it was really amazing experience. And our job as a mountain team is basically being able to be the experts in covering that terrain, modern warfare in that environment. Really, it was a blessing. It was really cool because it got me kickstarted again back into the mountains. I'd never been stationed in the mountains since I left. I was always in, North Carolina. So getting out to Colorado into the mountains and experiencing that really helped kickstart everything. Got me into skiing and ski racing and ski mountaineering and doing a lot of cool things in the mountains, riding snowmobiles, all of that. Gave me a really cool skill set. We also did a lot of Arctic warfare, so all of our deployments and training events were in, Finland, Sweden, Norway, Alaska. I know what it's like to be, negative 50 below zero and
yeah, that's my life.
Surviving and patrolling and actually being effective against the enemy, in that environment. So,
right.
So anyway, I just kind of give you that because that was kind of my rundown of my military career, in a bridge version. But a lot of guys on my skill set, it's very easy for us to go into contracting work for OGAs, for other government agencies, whether that's, federal stuff with the agency, the CIA, the FBI, DEA. There's programs on programs on programs that exist. Right. The government likes to use government contractors because we are not, how do I say it politically? There's some spy games going on there, if you will, with some of that stuff. Yeah. and the way things look. But a buddy of mine was already doing anti-human trafficking. So I was like, I didn't want to do a contract that was just like, going to work for the agency and driving, case officers around and this and that. And all these people think these guys have these badass high level jobs. And I was deployed with them. I know what they do. I know what's going on. And I was kind of like, no. And then they hit me up about this job. And I said, if you're going, I'll go. I'll do it. So we went. And then I retired January 2020. So COVID hit right after. Kick us out. And I'm like, I want to do this for Americans. I want to do this for my people. Like I really started, I didn't have social media until I retired from the Army. So a few months go by me having social media. I'm seeing MMIW issues. I'm seeing way more posts and people talking about it and what's going on. Ivanka Trump was very heavy in trying to pass Savannah's law and working with that. I started following like who's actually in politics or who's trying to make a difference, like what's going on. I just started following it. And then from there, I just started seeing families. I reached out to families that were looking for somebody that was missing. And the first one was in my area was on Navajo. And I was just like, I'm like 4 hours away. I can trailer my horses down there. I can, or not bring a horse. I'm good. I can walk around with the backpack on. Like I can do that. I can track. I've been in man tracker school. Like I've done this. I'm pretty good at it. Like, I like to pride myself as being like a real Indian, like in that way. Like if I'm looking for you in the woods, like I'm coming for you. You're not gonna make
chills.
it. So I felt that, and I was like, I can do this. So I, reached out to families, started working, helping, doing search and rescue efforts. And then I really needed a way to pay for it. And I was like, dude, I don't know how to pay for this. And I started a t-shirt company that was just drop shipping t-shirts. I was like, well, I don't have to have inventory and this is easy. I can do it on the internet. And I started War Party Movement, which really was just kind of a t-shirt company to help me pay for what was going on. That grew and grew because I really relied on the veteran community, in particular, special operations veterans, my buddies, that were looking for, the motto of special forces is "De oppresso liber," which means to free the oppressed. And it was like, what's more that mission set than trying to, combat anti-human trafficking, and regardless who it's, whether it's native, non-native, whatever's going on, like that's the ultimate mission, in my eyes is freeing the oppressed that live here in our own country, our own, where we live at. Like what's going on? This is ridiculous.
Yes.
So the coolest thing was, I could send a black Navy SEAL, a Mexican, MARSOC Marine, a white, Green Beret to regardless of the family. And that Native family treated them like they were part of their family. They loved the fact that they had this warrior there helping them, trying to conduct this investigation, trying to figure out what was going on. So it really was this kind of like I have a buddy in an area and then I'd say, hey, give him a call, or hey, man, I have a bunch of money, but I can cover your gas. Or the family, was trying to cook for everybody, get fry bread for everybody. If I send you some money, can you give it, get them shopping, do this, help search and rescue efforts, see if you can maybe just help them organize it or whatever, use your skill sets. And a lot of these guys just hit the ground running and, made so much progress and that just kind of that ground roots efforts of the search and rescue things that we did. That kind of grew into, even paying for like ladies therapy or continuing on what was going on. Like, how do we continue to help? And then about a year and a half into that, I had worked specifically with a young lady that I helped get out of a really bad situation on the reservation. They had killed her boyfriend in front of her, tortured him and killed him, and then came after her. She was able to escape out of the back door and took off running. And so anyway, we got her to a safe location. And I was like, man, that was awesome. We had this big win. We're feeling like, okay, we did something. And then like 2 weeks later, I'm calling the safe house trying to look for her, updates or whatever. And she's nowhere to be found. And then like 2 months later, we find out that she overdosed, on fentanyl in Pueblo, Colorado. So I was like, what is are we winning here? Like, what's the solution? I started looking into the nonprofits that were rescuing people. And one of the big things that we saw, and the particular why we wanted to work for the one I worked for that was doing their thing overseas, was they had a big recovery center like a big orphanage, if you will, like would take them in school. When you go there, the kids are playing games. It's really cool to see. I mean, I don't think kids can fake happiness, in that way. And
You're
and
right.
it was like very genuine to see
Mm-hmm.
that these women and kids had this thing, and they would teach the ladies a skill set, to sew, to do whatever, and they would be able to
Wow.
work in factories and work
Yeah.
and be able to, take care of their kids, and they all lived in this kind of really cool community.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that being said, I looked at that, what was going on. I'm like, well, why isn't there anything here in the States? Like, we help a woman. I'm calling every church and nonprofit I can to try to get her a bed, and it's like not a fault of their own, but like, they might have a bed, but then when they're there, what are they doing? It's almost like going to jail, in my point, like to prison,
Yeah.
where,
Yeah.
if you're there at this place and you're only surrounded by negativity, everyone's complaining about, their situation. No, this facility isn't like helping you get on and do your resume and look for jobs or like restart your life. They're just trying to make sure you're not doing drugs and like not trying to
Right.
kill yourself and dealing with all that type of stuff at its
Mm-hmm.
highest level. So you just fall through the cracks, and you don't break the cycle of abuse and that
Yeah.
trauma. So seeing that, I was like,
Mm-hmm.
what was there a way that we can improve this and really try to make a dent? And when I look at like, so some friends and we started War Party Ranch, which is a nonprofit. It's a 501c3 nonprofit. And their idea was, we wanted to create a place we could bring ladies in, teach
Mm-hmm.
them warrior skill sets, get their foot in the door in the ranching community, and then be able to, kind of help them get a follow-on job in that. Realizing the money that it would take to facilitate something like that is ridiculous. We tried to vet some ladies very well. We
Mm-hmm.
thought we did. It kind of turned out where they weren't tough. They wanted to do cowgirl shit on Instagram. They weren't trying to do cowboy shit for real.
Yeah.
And it was, so trial and error. And, we had some things we could have done better, and vice versa. And so what we did was we adopted a clinic model. And in
Mm.
that clinic model, which is really cool, is we have subject matter experts on our board that deal with our mission statement, which is, we're teaching warrior skill sets based in the Western, Western world. So we're teaching horsemanship, stockmanship, horse packing, hunting, um, self-defense, firearms training, and we also have sponsorships. So in that, the clinic model, we're able to, we were just down in the train 9 ladies from the Tehamo Dam Reservation in Arizona. We were able to bring them to the range. They don't pay for anything. We teach them, 2 full days of pistol training,
Yeah.
and get them from where they never touched a gun in their life to now they're comfortable, carrying it in there, concealed, being able to use it, prepare for that the most likely situation is an altercation from 1 to 3 meters in under 3 seconds. So
Mm.
we specifically train that.
Mm-hmm.
Our hunting clinics, it's ran by, a lady who does nothing but hunting, and that's what she's been doing all her life and growing up. And
Yeah.
we really want to show this, because the thing I realized from my mother and looking at my mom as this powerful lady, my wife, the other ladies on the board that started this with me, was they really embodied what I feel that like most people forget about women being warriors, in the fact that, yeah, women aren't men, like they're not that same, stature of a warrior, 1v1. However, regardless of your skin color, your culture, wherever you're from, we're all rooted in, we all have this deep roots connected to the land. We all had to work and live off the land at some
Yeah.
point. We had this very warrior culture that did that.
Yeah.
So whether it's, the Vikings when they went off to raid, or it was the, Apache to go steal horses from the Navajo, or whatever's going on, when the men leave to go do things, the women have to take care of the elderly and the children. It doesn't mean they don't know how to defend. They don't know how to not hunt and do all of those things. So I think that is something that's heavily kind of misconstrued or forgotten in modern times, about how, that mama bear, like,
Mm-hmm.
you're a warrior too, just
Yes.
because you're a lady doesn't mean anything. You have to be able to defend your cubs, your kids, your family. Um, so we really have that mindset in everything that we teach and everything that we do. And I think the coolest thing about the kind of blending the cowboy world with, my tactical world of
Mm-hmm.
that self-defense and whatnot, and what the ladies have, as well as hunting, is there all these just massive confidence builders for you, whether you're controlling 1,000-pound animal and you're learning how to rope off of it, or you've never held a pistol and by the end of it, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm pulling this thing out of my pants in seconds and engaging this target. So the confidence that just skyrockets through them, and then they get a path forward of like, okay, I think that the biggest thing they get is that like that feeling of a warrior again. Like, I'm not this person that went through this. It's a chapter of my life. It's not the book. Like, what am I doing? I'm still writing this book. Like, that's a chapter. I don't need to constantly revisit this. It's not the whole book, So I think that that's the biggest thing that we take away. Isn't necessarily the skill set that they gained. Yes, that's huge. That's important, but it's that confidence level and their ability to now carry themselves forward in a different way than they were before they came to us. So that is in a nutshell what War Party Ranch is. And then War Party Movement over the years, we've really kind of developed into supporting War Party Ranch as much as possible. And then I've taken on a kind of behind the scenes. I still work with the law enforcement agencies that I've made connections with. A lot of the stories I can't talk about or tell. It's me being a Green Beret, networking and doing what I know how to do. And now behind the scenes, I do have a lot of grassroots efforts that I'm able to connect the dots with. And it could be something as simple as an investigation's going on. We'd like to have a dog team. Okay, easy. We have contacts at Borstar. They can run their dogs. You need so-and-so to call them. Call this number. Simple things like that, all the way to, physically still boots on ground and some investigations. Yeah. And then I've really picked up, I started a new thing called the War Party Fight Crew. And what I wanted to do with that was showcase, like, you have to train, you have to be a warrior. All the fighters I've ever been around my whole life, they weren't these like piece of shit jackass guys who were super cocky and wanted to beat everybody up. They were just the opposite to me. They were, they fight all the time. So they're just it's just like, okay, why would I fight you? Why would I be upset at that? Or they just treated people differently because there's ramifications of how they conduct themselves when they're in that gym. But they're also training, to be able to defend themselves and defend their family. So that being said, I looked at that and I had this saying when I started War Party Movement that says, you are the movement. And what does that mean? It means like, everybody complains about what's going on around them, but no one's doing anything in their community. Like, how are we making it better? It's like, if we make our communities better, then everything around us is going to be better. So if you can't complain about the school board, if you've never been to a school board meeting, like, get involved. How can we do this together? So what I chose to do was highlight people that are living the movement. So I have Res Dogs Jiu-Jitsu that we're sponsoring through the War Party Fight Crew. And they're Tahem Odam down in Tucson. An uncle just got mats during COVID, wanted a place for the kids to not get in trouble. Yeah. Brought him in and started training. And this has grown, a full jiu-jitsu academy with fighters that have fights every weekend and they're training their butts off. And I look at the way we combat human trafficking. Like, people say, like, what's the solution or what's the best way? And it's like, I can't do what I want to do with what I'm trained to do and my friends are trained to do. And the reality of it is like, if we didn't want cartels here anymore, if we didn't want human trafficking, you could literally give me and, 50 of my friends and guys like me a couple $1 million and the free will to kill bad people. Yeah. And we could end stuff like that. The reality is we're scared of that. We won't allow that to happen in our society. That's not who we are. Yeah. We have to be kinder, gentler. Okay. So I look at the real way that we can combat that is, yes, I'd like to kick indoors and do bad things to bad people. I'll go to jail for that. Yeah. The best way I can assist with War Party Movement now is to put my hand on the back of law enforcement and help try to guide them the best way I can to help solve these cases, to help do the right thing, to give them resources, whether that's training, equipment, whatever I can help them with. And then really focus on the youth and these programs like Res Dog Jiu-Jitsu. Yeah. And I have another one here, MAD Wrestling Club. It's heavy focus on girls wrestling. Just badass uncle who used to be an MMA fighter and a wrestler, teaching these youth and bringing these kids into a place that they have one, they're learning a skill set to defend themselves, which is and so important. And then
Yes.
they're learning, they're a part of this warrior culture. They're learning that toughness, that grittiness. They're competing. They have this like sense of belonging to a team, to a family. They're cheered on people. They're being cheered on. That confidence is so important. And I think, martial arts was so impactful on my life as a young man, training, and I want a way to pay it forward. So really the War Party Fight Crew is just a way that I can highlight people that are living the movement and honor these kids. And I think that that's the best way to combat anti-human trafficking is, one, the law enforcement aspect of they need the proper tools and the assistance in the right way. And then the other side of that is we have to create programs for the youth to raise their awareness about themselves, about what's actually going on, but give them the confidence to be able to walk around with their head up and have something they belong to and trouble to stay out of. Like they're going to get tempted with, drugs and alcohol and sex and this and that and everything you can think of. We need an outlet for that. And if you can show them what right looks like, it doesn't always have to come from your immediate family or your parents. Like, I look at these men, these coaches, these uncles training and mentoring these people, and that's what I want to highlight. So,
Yes.
sorry for rambling, but
No,
that
not at
is
all.
War Party Movement and War Party
Yeah.
Ranch in kind of a
Yeah, no,
nutshell, if
I
you will.
absolutely love it, Jeremiah, and that's exactly why I wanted to have you on today because as you and I have spoke in the past just a little bit, I work with the violent offenders. And when I tell people that, I kind of get funny looks sometimes, right? Because, you're working with the victims, I'm working with the offenders. However, you and I both know if we can't heal these individuals, then it's just perpetuating. It keeps going around and around. And your movement is kind of what I want to do here in Canada with the young men and women too, right? But because a lot of my clients are, they're trying to exit gangs
Mhm.
and they are wanting to get help, but they just don't know how. They've been
Yeah.
molded into these people that violence and chaos was just part of their norm, right?
Yeah. No, I agree. More power to you. I think it's really cool what you're trying to do. Something came to mind,
Hmm.
and my analogy, because of my autism brain, I have
Yeah.
two
Mhm.
speeds of like stop and fast.
That's fine.
My emotions aren't normal. I
Hmm.
didn't do a normal job for
Hmm.
22 years.
Of course not.
Um, and, there's been, you know, okay. So what I'll say is this, in special forces, hold on, someone second. My wife's phone's ringing. I don't know if you can hear it or not.
I can hear it a little bit. That's
Okay.
okay.
No, I'll wait for it's done. I'm in her office. So,
Oh yeah. No, 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 no worries. You know
okay.
what?
So
I'm not all about like the whole polished production. I just
okay.
like the conversation, you
Cool.
know? Because you'll
Okay.
see me
So,
shaking the table sometimes and
okay.
it doesn't matter.
All right. So, in special forces, one of the biggest things that we do is planning,
Hmm.
and we have an acronym that we use called PACE, which stands for
Pace.
primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency.
Mm.
And everything that we plan for, we want to have a primary, alternate, a contingency, and emergency. So you can look at that through the lens of like communications.
Mhm.
So me being a communicator, that's my specialty. I need to have all those layers of different ways that I'm going to talk to, headquarters, to pilots,
Mhm.
to my team, like every person that needs to talk and communicate. I have to figure those layers out and how that's going to look.
Mhm.
And that's what the routes we do, everything we do. And then the other thing we do is we do contingencies upon contingency upon contingency. And how we get those is that we look at two things. The enemy's going to do two things. We look at the most likely thing the enemy's going to do to us, and we
Mhm.
train and practice contingencies for that. We
Mhm.
look at the most dangerous thing the enemy can do to us, and we rehearse and practice contingencies for that. And then we also practice and rehearse all the Murphy what if things. What if the vehicle breakdowns?
Mhm.
What if this
Yep.
helicopter crashes? What if this happens?
Wow.
We what if it so much, and with all these experts, the engineers are looking at the building of what door can we blow the most, or I can't, I need to go in this wall, or this tactics are being used. So we go through everything we can. So what we really do is we're really evaluating and assessing the enemy. And I want to learn as much as I possibly can about the enemy. We also think like a bad guy. And one of the reasons why I think that the way we teach situational awareness to our clinics is because it's taught by special forces operators who have hunted and killed people and gone after this and thought like a bad guy and understand this. And for this is the longest, to get here.
Okay.
To be able to hear these guys' stories, to understand, a little bit of the why, how do they think about things? Why are they doing something? I think that that's important to be able to understand, in particular, the people who were, to hear their interviews that were, child predators, sexual predators, like to understand that psyche, what's going around, what are they looking for? And you'll hear those things where it's like, they look at the dad. Is there a dad present? Is he a tough guy? Is he not? Like, there's a lot of things that go into that, or victim, guys that it might not be, sexual things. It might be people you work with that, did like armed robbery, things like that. What did you look for? Why did you steal this car? Why are you really good at stealing cars? But maybe he's only good at stealing one type of car. But the reason why I say that is we have to interact. We need to know what's going on and how can we help. That helps kind of reverse engineer some of that to fix that.
Yes.
But it also helps us reverse engineer so we don't become victims. So I know what signs to look for. I can see red flags saying if it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, it's probably a duck.
Right.
So I'm able to, not bury myself in my phone. I'm able to look at my situation, look at my surroundings, and be a hard target and be a threat to people who think they can do something bad to me. I want them to think twice. Just like on the schoolyard, that bully, if you let him bully you, he's going to pick on you, he's going to bully you. But real bullies don't want to get punched in the mouth. Even if they can kick your ass, they still don't want to get hurt in the process.
That's right.
So, be that, do that. And I think that what you're doing allows us to be able to allow, how can we learn from them as to not be victims, to see that vulnerability. And then for them, moving forward of like, why did you choose to do that? Was that the easy way? Re-engineering that, like you said, gang life, or this is what I know. It was easy. It's easier for me to do that than, go work construction because I don't want to, or whatever it is. We need to dig down that and help that person if we can, rehabilitate them in a way. But at the same time, I'm also one of those people who's really big on, you reap what you sow, and you got to cover your, pay the consequences for your actions.
Oh, yes.
And, from a kid at a young age, it was like, whether it was a butt whipping or you're grounded or chores or whatever, like no matter, how you move forward in life, and you have to learn from that mistake, and you take those lumps and you move forward. And I think that society has just gotten so far away from holding people accountable for anything anymore that it's even more so in our judicial system where these guys go to prison. They basically just get indoctrinated. It helps them become, whether it's a better criminal or farther down the rabbit hole of, I'm not worth it. The only thing I know is this. And they're also in this constant heightened sense of like vulnerability, no matter how tough and badass you are in there. When you're on the inside, I mean, you can get raped, killed, beaten, anything can happen to anyone. So they're at this heightened sense of they almost have to, they're in this survival mode. So the last thing on their plate oftentimes is trying to be in some kind of rehab or something that's going to make them a better person. And, the layers of our judicial system and the way the prison system works and the money and the root of all evil and the root of all of our problems and in our countries, Canada and the United States is the money that's held over our political, people that run everything. Everything's money. Everything is just twisted money pit when you really fall down the line, where the resources and the funding is there, but the funding's there, but the resources aren't. We're not doing this in a good way. So I think that what you're doing is definitely key because it's allowing us to try to figure out a way to, prevent things from happening, to
Yes.
get these young men and these young women before they go down that path,
Yes.
to how can we, learn from those mistakes? How can we not be a victim of some of the things that those criminals have done, or criminals in general? And
Mm-hmm.
then that third thing is, understanding them, and trying to, help them move forward and not look at life of like, it's a chapter of the book, it's not the whole book.
Exactly. I
And
love
also,
that.
no one cares what you've done in the past. It's about what you're doing right now, to an extent. The problem with the criminal is those things do follow you. It is really hard for them. You could have been in a gang, had aggravated assault, gun charges, drug charges. Now you're a felon. I mean, I'm sorry to tell you, but you're limited on where you're going to work. You're going to fight wildland fire. You're going to be a mason worker. You're going to work
Yep.
construct. You're going to do something hard with your hands, but that's okay,
Mm-hmm.
because those things need to be built. We need those things done. It takes a warrior spirit and a warrior mindset to do those jobs day in and day out, and not want to put a pistol in your mouth, to have self-worth. There's a lot of things that are attainable, and there's guys who have their own
Mm-hmm.
construction companies now and their own businesses and have moved on with life, and done those. There's plenty of success stories, but the reality is I feel that we're never preparing them for that. Um, and a good example is my uncle. He ran. I have my grandfather and my three uncles were all fire captains in San Diego County,
Mm-hmm.
and my uncle ran the female prison crews during fire season.
Wow.
And he loved that program. Those ladies, I mean, he was super proud of them, like how hard they
Yeah.
worked and the things that they did, and
Yeah.
the lives and the homes that they saved. And a lot of people talk negative about that program because they look at, oh, it's like slave labor, it's this or it's that. But the amount of success stories with the women who were in that program while they were in prison and then get released, it's crazy, because they were a chance to be a part of a team, to be appreciated, to
Yeah.
learn a
Get
skill
out of
set.
here and into here.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
so I think that, like, there's some paths forward, but it's definitely rooted in,
Yeah.
and I'm sorry, it's going to be rooted in really hard work that
Yeah.
you're going to have to do because of your resume that you carry forward, and
Yeah.
so yes, that whole, no one cares what you've done in the past. Uh, yeah, people do
Yeah.
care, to an extent, but that's part of your track record, and people have to go on that. And then the best thing that advice I give people that gotten in trouble, and young men or young ladies have done certain things is, you know, um, I was fortunate enough that my mistakes I was able to move past, and I didn't, I was a juvenile and I was charged as a juvenile, and things I got into. Um, Even as an adult, I fights and stuff I've gotten into or whatever. I've been fortunate,
Mm-hmm.
but I say that, if you're going to move on from those mistakes in life, you've got
Mm-hmm.
to take accountability of saying, like, this is what I did. I made that mistake. It
Yeah.
was on me. You can't blame everybody else for what you've done. And you really do have to kind of look at it as like, I took the easy way out,
Mm-hmm.
in this, and making these decisions. But it doesn't mean that, like, you can't completely be a different person. And I think a lot of younger people have a hard time realizing that, kind of reinvent yourself like every 5 to 10 years of your life and
Yes,
who you are. And,
exactly.
10-year separation can be in the difference between you being a dad of, three kids or whatever, or a mom,
Mm-hmm.
there's so many things that help, to reinvent who you are.
Yeah.
Um, so for these people that have made, some rough choices in life, I think the best thing that they can do is find a really hard something really hard to do. Uh, and it doesn't have to be this crazy manual labor job. You can get good with, computers or whatever,
Yeah.
but you need to start boxing, or you need to start running ultra
Mm-hmm.
marathons, or you need to do something physical. If you can, go be a cowboy and work on a ranch and soak that up and just work and get paid $5 a day,
Mm-hmm.
you need to do it. If you need to go learn to weld, go get on an oil rig, go be around that.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to physically reinvent yourself, but it needs to come from this, like, very, very rugged, hard thing to do. And I think that it's important for people to have those hard jobs in life, because it does give you a point to look back on and say, like, man, I really don't want to be back there again.
Mm-hmm.
It gives you a sense of, like, you're climbing this hill, I think it's really important for you to be able to kind of have that same sense of, if you're climbing a mountain, some of the coolest things is turning around and taking a break and looking at the scenery and looking where you are and look how far you've come, or looking up and seeing how far you still have to go. And, I think that that's part of the human journey. But people just don't do hard shit anymore and want to take that on.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
my advice to the young people I run into along the ways, and people I know that have gotten into problems, is
Mhm.
go get a different, you're in the wrong job. You're around the wrong people. You've got to leave town. You got to get away from where you are.
Yeah.
You can't continuously go for what you know. And because of
Yeah.
going for what you know, and the only thing you know isn't right, then you need to search out what right looks like. And that could just be a change in the city, the change in your environment.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, with felons, you're tied to, parole,
It's
and
hard.
there's a lot of things that
Mhm.
are make it very difficult for them.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for that, Jeremiah, because I'm definitely going to highlight that piece because you said it wonderfully. It's so true. And, and the thing is, I was just working for a program that was a 6 months program. However, and I'm not saying that that doesn't work. They learned a lot about anger management, healthy relationships, all of the
Hmm.
things. But the piece that's missing is elements from War Party Ranch,
Yeah.
working with their hands, working with the land, working with livestock. Because I think that would be a huge game changer. And that's kind of what I'm trying to I'm just trying to network and find people that can help me make that happen.
Hmm.
Right. But one
Yeah.
thing that's super frustrating is when I hear sponsorship and nonprofit. We have to
Oh yeah.
fight tooth and nail to get the money to do these programs. And that to me is just wrong.
Yeah. Well, I look at it as like the other side of that too, which I think
Mhm.
is really shitty, is the fact that nonprofits have to exist. Like,
Mm.
why am I, as a civilian, regardless of my skill set, like I'm just
Yeah.
a civilian?
Mhm.
Um, why am I doing search and rescue efforts on Navajo, and why am I the only person that can talk between Navajo PD and it, it doesn't make sense. And to have this much money in our governments, to have this
Yes.
many programs, to have this
Mhm.
many things, to even have to have nonprofits, have to try to raise money. I don't care if it's for, the stupid nonprofits that exist,
Mhm.
but like, people are raising money for all these different causes
Yeah.
because there's a flaw, a chink in the system
Mhm.
of actually creating programs that really take care of each other. And what I
Yes.
really think it really boils down to in both countries is that our
Mhm.
governments are just too big. We got away from these small villages of taking care of community. Um,
Mhm.
and my example is this: I went to Poland last year to teach tactical horsemanship to the Polish Agat. They're
Mhm.
the anti-Gestapo group. They were established after World War or during World War II to hunt the Gestapo, and after they're one of their special forces units. Super cool, amazing guys. What I loved about Poland in particular was they still had this very like warrior mindset with especially I was around special forces guys,
Mhm.
but even a lot of the young men in that Polish culture, they fighting and wrestling and boxing and being this masculine kind of machismo kind of way, and then really looking out for women and being in that. But they, when you go to these smaller towns or little villages,
Mhm.
everything kind of stays in there. So like there's more, there's different foods or fruit and stuff that kind of come
Mhm.
from different places. The food in down south in the mountains was different than the food that was up north on the coast. And I think as Americans and Canadians and people in general, what's
Mhm.
different from a lot of other countries is we get in this 7-Eleven model of it's open 24/7. Amazon's going to bring it to my doorstep. We
Mhm.
want it. If we want it, we get it right now. We want strawberries in February. No one cares that strawberries don't grow. We don't we don't create a small circle and take care of each other within that circle. So if we were able to do that more, and we just moved to Florida, so I live in Florida. I happen to live in cattle country, Florida, where there's a lot of ag. So it's like, for me, it should be really easy for my family to purchase beef and oranges and all these other things. Whereas, if you live in New Jersey, oranges should cost you a little bit more. It should be more of a luxury because you live in New Jersey for us to ship it up there and do that. But we don't look at it that way as in our countries, which is like Poland had this different, in a lot of places I've been in Europe and just other countries around the world. They have this little bit of a smaller community type of thing where they keep their resources closer together. And I think if we were to take that model with not just our food, not just how we operate, with things in general, but everything, how we take care of each other. And it's supposed to be that way when you look at, counties and cities and the way things are broken down. But unfortunately, we just have this overwhelming disgustingness of money in politics.
Yeah.
So we have to have nonprofits that have to do these grassroots efforts to, try to help what's going on in our communities. And it is very sad. And raising money it's gross. It feels gross to ask. It sucks.
I
It's
know.
everybody, oh, I love what you're doing, blah, blah, blah. But like, no one gives a shit. No, people aren't going to give me $1. Like it doesn't, it's nonprofit work is really hard. The coolest thing I think we've been able to do at War Party Ranch, and one of my funny things I say all the time is like, we've done a lot with $500, like the volunteers, the people that, give us stuff and donate us things and help us put together stuff for, just dirt cheap, I would like for people to break zero, be net zero on helping us. And oftentimes that's not the case, even with ourselves, we're up until this year, 2025, last year was the first year we had some, a little bit of money where like we, not out of pocket on everything, and which is really cool to be able to be there. And we're definitely blessed to have, people wanting to support us. But the reality is like, it's really tough on nonprofits to raise money.
Yeah.
You have to tell the story. My analogy I always use is, back in the day, like all the extreme sports, the guys who could climb the best and, the best parachute guy, the best motocross rider, whatever, was just these legends that did it, and you knew who was the best. Yeah. And then as like GoPros came out and content came out, it was now who's the best anymore. It was who could capture it the best.
Yeah.
And I think that's like kind of exactly how nonprofits and movements of like who's doing what and who's doing good in society and who's helping. It's oftentimes like who tells the best story. And it's sad that a lot of times they are just stories, like it's made up story. And then in our line of work, working with, the men that you work with, and then us working with the ladies that we work with, often those stories are shameful. They're hard. They're not something they're proud of. They don't know how to navigate it. They're still trying to navigate it. I'm not going to tell their story for them. I'm not going to say, oh, look at the good we did and look how awesome we are. And So it's always a blessing when you have a success story and somebody that wants to pay it forward, a lady or a young man that says, this is where I was, this is possible. So I think that's very important. But unfortunately, it's the nonprofits that are making the best content, that are doing that get the most, visibility, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing too, is like I had a lot of really good ideas, and we do have the resources around us. Like we have one of the largest ranches in North America. It's a working cattle ranch, and apparently they have done some stuff in the past. So I'm just in the infancy stages, but I am going to start reaching out to people. And but I did get hit with a lot of resistance just in the nonprofit, because it's like, well, we don't have the funding for that, and we can't do this, and we can't do that. And so if you're a millionaire and you're watching right now,
right?
Yeah.
The other thing I thought of, it was like with the young men that I was saying, people, just man or woman that's trying to get forward after doing something, making mistakes in life. one of the big things I do challenge them with is, especially the young men, especially understanding, that gang life, and we can get in a little bit more. I can share some with that, but
Mm-hmm.
understanding that um, the reason why I love the military and like the cowboy world is because, special forces, it's like a funny thing people say all over kind of the operator community, but it's like everybody wants to be a gangster until it's time to do gangster shit.
Oh,
And it's like
yes.
everybody
I've
wants to
heard
run
that.
around and look cool like we do and all this.
Mhm.
But like, yeah, they really don't want to do that.
Mhm.
And we've been tested before, right?
Mhm.
And the same with like cowboys. It's like everybody wants to be a cowboy till it's time to do cowboy shit. Like everybody's a cowboy till the rope gets tight.
Mhm.
And to my favorite thing about the Army and about being a cowboy is you can run your mouth all you want. You can fake the funk all you want, but we're going to find out real quick if you're really about that action, because nothing like your skill set's not going to lie to us. We're going to see it in front of
Mm.
us.
Yeah.
So you have to learning something and doing something hard, that's also rooted in a lot of values,
Mhm.
even if they are kind of shady and weird, meaning like miners and other jobs that are out there, they are
Mhm.
full of a lot of guys that have a criminal background and really hard work.
Yeah.
But with the coolest thing about all these blue collar industries that I've seen in my lifetime is that your reputation means something, and
Right.
you can build a reputation for being hardworking, for being honest, for being loyal, for doing all those things, or you can continue to, you know, uh, step on it, and mess up. And now that's going to be spread that don't hire Jeremiah. He'll steal from me. He stole a
Mm.
chainsaw from me and never brought it back or whatever.
Right.
And a lot of these people aren't going to be the ones like, they're not going to call the cops on you. They're just never going to help you again. They're
Right.
just never going to want to do something for you again or
Mhm.
hire you or whatever. So I think that that's important, to humble yourself, to be able to take your lumps, to be able to get cussed out and have thick skin and be like, yes, sir, Roger that. I messed that up. Like, okay,
Mm. Yeah.
and have a profession, a job, a skill set
Mhm.
that you're chasing that really, where your reputation can carry that forward.
Yeah.
I think that's really important.
Yes. Yes, very important. And that's the vision that I had too. We had some people that were going to come out and teach them how to weld,
Hmm. Yeah,
right?
heck yeah.
Yeah, and of course, there's always going to be that rare, I think, incident where somebody might take off with some hand tools or power tools or
Hmm.
whatever, right? But yeah, we've had that happen. So
Hmm.
I do understand what you're saying there. And
Yeah.
then we had another guy that was going to come out and help them learn how to butcher. You know,
Yeah,
um,
heck yeah.
yeah, and I'm wondering like maybe that's not such a good one to because now we're working with knives and
Knives. Yeah. No. Yeah. I think all those things are, cool for those guys to get involved with, and I think there's a way where you can um,
Mhm.
definitely kind of narrow it down and try to see who's the right fit for some of
Mhm.
these programs. But also teaching that accountability piece, I think, would be
Yes.
key, because if you can do these programs with a team mentality and have an accountability,
Yes.
meaning like, we're here working with Jeremiah because he allows us to. So
Mhm.
if one of you chooses to walk away with one of his saws, we're all done. Like,
Yes.
no one's going to be able to work with his in this program.
Yeah.
Holding people accountable and having them being like, hey man, you
So
need to make the right
true.
decision because this is
Yeah.
on all of us. Like, I'm here
Yeah.
trying to become a better person,
Mhm.
and I want to learn how to run this chainsaw because I'm going to work on the
Yeah.
wildland crew. This is what I'm doing,
Yeah.
versus being like, and trying to pick those guys and teaching that accountability for each other in this team type of
Mhm.
setting. It's all of us, not just one of us, because I think that singular thinking is the biggest problem we have in
Mhm.
modern society. And it's the thing I see the most with working with a lot of these ladies on trying to help them move
Mhm.
past things that's happened to them. A lot of them um, still kind of have that like victim mentality, like, oh, this happened to me and this woe is me type of thing, without being able to reflect and look inward and say like,
Mhm.
hey, if you've been in multiple abusive relationships,
Mhm.
then you need to look at, like, maybe you've never learned what right looks like. I understand that.
Yeah.
However, we need to look at this and say, like, what red flags, what things did you see
Mm-hmm.
before this started? And if we even need to come up with, little checks and balances that work for you until you get it figured out. But you need to be able to understand boundaries and when to set those and when to say no. So like if I'm on a date with you or I'm dating you and I call you a fucking bitch screaming in your face, like
Mm-hmm.
that automatically should be like, wow, like I don't talk to people
Red
that way that I
flag.
don't like,
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, so
Yeah.
that should be something we're like, oh, okay, when this date is over,
Yeah.
like I'm not gonna date Jeremiah anymore. Like this, no. And you're learning that. So the
Yes.
big thing I've seen is that a lot of times, working through these ladies, we're trying to build this confidence,
Mm-hmm.
but the reality is War Party Ranch isn't for everybody because we don't have kid gloves. Like
Mm-hmm.
when you're learning cowboy shit from these badass cowgirls, like it's going to come once, they're going to have patience to work with you. But like if you mess up something or you're not doing what you're told because you're just choosing not to, or
Yes, that's
you're not
different.
listening, that's different. And
Mm-hmm.
there's some hard lessons to be learned in a lot of that.
Yeah.
So in that, the biggest thing is we have to accept that we're not saying something bad that's happened to you. If you're a kid, it wasn't your fault whatsoever.
Of
But
course.
as adults, we've got to be able to look at things and say, you know what? I made some poor decisions here.
Yes.
I put myself in a bad spot.
Yeah.
Just like when I'm looking at fighting, if I'm sparring at the gym one day, I can look at what happened and think about it and be like, dang, I put myself in a bad spot and he caught me with this.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing. Okay, now I don't want to be there. I know what that's like. I know
Exactly.
what position I was in or what happened to me there. I need to
Mm-hmm.
work, circling the other foot or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I have to look inward at what I did wrong to improve those things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that is the hardest thing because it takes you have to go back to the whole, the golden rule of treat others as you'd want to be treated. You have to kind of remove yourself and put yourself in other people's shoes,
Mm-hmm.
to the outside looking in, to that. And I think that that's really hard for people to do. So we try to help assist that just through the progression of the training that we're going through, how dangerous it is, how you
Yeah.
can get hurt. We're doing stunt clinics and girls are falling off
Yeah.
riding
Those are
horses and
wild. Yeah.
rolling off horses and
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And there's, we're putting you in very vulnerable positions
Yeah.
that you have to try, you have to, really listen and really focus and really humble yourself. And you don't know it. Be quiet. Stop talking.
Yeah.
You've never done this. Be
Yeah.
quiet, and allow yourself to do those things. So that's something we really try to do and have that kind of even leadership and guidance to, I've messed up. This is what I've done. And even trying to show it in small ways, whether it was, I rope in the dummy and I do something wrong. Hey, what did I do wrong? Kind of showing it through even something totally different and doesn't relate to, how you choose men or women in your life or drugs or alcohol or whatever the case is.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's really important to blend those two worlds together, like the cognitive and then the hands-on stuff. Because I mean,
Absolutely.
some of these are like very deeply rooted behaviors and patterns that, the neurology wires, and that's just who they are. And but having this hands-on stuff kind of interrupts that.
Absolutely.
And gets them out of here and into here, which is
Yeah.
very important. Because even when it comes to developing programs for offenders, like we're looking at the 8 criminogenic needs, and the big 4 is like the antisocial personality, the antisocial behavior, antisocial cognitive, and then peers. And I think that a lot of programs really need to focus on that because otherwise we're not getting to the root of the problem. Right. And
Oh
then
yeah, absolutely.
some cowboy stuff. Yes, bring it.
Yeah, they
Yes.
definitely need the hands-on portion for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that part of you and your movement and what you're doing, Jeremiah. Because
I appreciate it.
for me, having you on as a guest is also kind of a consultation for me too. Because
Okay.
because I'm taking
Yeah.
pieces of this and putting them in my back pocket.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. I mean, we have to learn from each other and
yes.
and support each other.
Hmm.
Like I said, that kind of that community vibe, that community uplifting each other,
Yeah.
if you will.
Yeah.
But like I said, if we don't if we just look at it singular and what I'm doing, and you're not able to, you're not going to have any traction in the community in what
Right.
you're trying to improve or the things you're complaining about or the things you're surrounded by.
Yes.
You really got to, do a good job at uplifting each other
Mm,
and trying to assist, when we can.
yeah.
Yeah, and I'm an open book. If anything I can assist you with,
Mm.
or in any way.
And ditto
Um,
too. If you ever need anything from me too, please don't hesitate.
yeah.
And even just like with the nonprofit organization, like I think I'm going to prepare a proposal for the bands, the local bands as well,
Hmm.
because I know that they would buy into something like this too, because Indigenous males are overrepresented in our judicial system.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I think that this would be a win for everyone.
Yeah.
You
One
know.
one of the things that I've noticed that I've been able to bring awareness to people that's going on
Mm-hmm.
is my time in the military. All the way from when I was a teenager, a kid fighting, and then doing martial arts, sparring, getting punched in the face all the time, and
Mm,
then all the traumatic brain injuries I've had in the Army, all the
yeah.
the explosions and fighting, all
Mm,
these things, right?
yeah.
So when you look at we know that's going on with us. We understand operator syndrome and a lot of what
Mm,
CTE issues cause. So there's a lot of, I have super connected to that because of my special forces background
right.
and how involved special forces is with, traumatic brain injuries and what it does to you.
Mm,
So going into the cowboy world, I noticed that like all my cowboy friends bucked off horses, got in fights, bonked their head.
mm,
They've all had concussions. They all had CTE. And then when looking at the women, it's like, yeah, especially the ones who've been in like very physical altercations.
yes.
A lot of them, because I'll even say like a lot of the things that people suffer from, here's one I say all the time. My life is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Why am I sad right now? Why am I feeling sad?
Mm,
And I have to physically tell myself, like, bro, you have a broken brain. Like sometimes your brain it just is not going to
yeah.
connect dots and you're going to feel a certain way.
Yeah.
So instead of going down the rabbit hole, I'm able to like cognitively say, hey, you have a broken brain because
Yeah.
of through my education of what's going on with my brain and what's happened to me, and I'm blessed, I have medical care and
Mm-hmm.
giving me hearing aids and therapy and
Yeah.
all these things that can do to try to improve my brain.
Mm-hmm.
But when I look at that too with what you're dealing with, I would suggest you to also look into that, look into the
Mm-hmm.
symptoms of CTE and what it actually does mentally and physically to these guys, because if they have led a life like that and have brain injuries, and what a lot of people don't understand about brain injuries, it doesn't mean that you had to be knocked unconscious for you to have a brain injury. Anytime that your brain, my father was an aviator for 30 some years.
Yeah.
He died really young,
Mm,
dementia really, but his
mm.
brain, and there's studies with the aviators because of the way their brain is vibrating in the aircraft. So
Ah.
there's a lot of different ways that CTE happens through brain
Mm,
trauma, whether you're punched in the head, slammed on the ground,
yeah.
got in a fight, got jumped into a gang,
Yeah.
you've got your bell rung playing football, whatever it is, anytime you got your bell rung a little bit,
Yeah.
those are traumatic brain injuries. And I think that that's something that is often overlooked in our society of this
Mm-hmm.
mental health crisis, what's going on, all these things. And it's like, well, we do have a lot of people who have had issues with brain trauma.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the only people who really talk about brain trauma are special, the special operations community
Yeah.
and the NFL.
Yeah.
Everybody else is just kind of like, well, and they don't really understand it as much, and they don't
Mm-hmm.
understand that can really hinder you from moving forward in a healing journey, or just
Absolutely.
figuring your life out health wise,
Mm-hmm.
because it affects you physically and mentally. And there's ways you can, take different vitamins and hormones, or,
Mm-hmm.
work out different and do different things in your life
Right.
to help you, cognitively regain what's going on with you. The amount of ladies I've heard, I'll say like, you ever been standing in the kitchen? You're like, why am I in the kitchen? What was I supposed to
Mm,
do? And I'm like, yeah, you also got the snot kicked out of you once, and that one time or multiple times you've had brain injuries. Like you
yes.
are suffering from CTE issues. You're
Mm-hmm.
not suffering from, oh, I'm just depressed and you're depressed because you have a chemical imbalance and your brain is not working the way it should be working
Agreed.
because of the trauma that you sustained to your brain.
Yeah.
So I'm a big advocate on trying to talk to people about that all the time, whether it's in the military community, the cowboy, anybody that I'm around, the fighters, I'm around a lot of MMA fighters and whatnot. And we talk about it openly. And I think they look at me as like a superhero because what I did for the Army, but I'm definitely not. But I think if like I'm a little vulnerable with, what's affected me with CTE, then it allows other guys, especially as guys, we always need this like manly dude to say it's okay, kind of.
Yes. Yeah.
Because we're going to measure ourselves on like, how gay can I get here with how I'm,
Yeah.
what I'm
Nobody
going to
wants to
express,
appear broken.
Yeah. And that's kind of a thing, which I agree with. I think that men should be manly, and I'm not with this whole crying and telling I think there's ways men should handle it, but
I hear you.
the CTE issue, I would suggest for you, and I can send you some links and some things, but
Sure,
for
I'd
your
appreciate
listeners, for
that.
your people, for your folks, your guys that listen to you and that you're mentoring and working with too, like have them look into that, like think about their life, and that possible connection to some CTE issues on just figuring out, understanding what is going on in my head and why. And I think that helps a ton.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. And let's not forget too the fetal alcohol syndrome as well.
Yeah.
There's different levels of it, of course, as we know, but one that I've come in contact with a lot is just that impulsivity, not knowing consequences the way they should.
Well,
You know,
that's also direct indicator of CTE issues. One of the things that
yeah,
the reason why so everybody knows that veteran suicide is, ridiculous numbers.
it's
But the
horrible.
reality of it is it's special operations veterans 33
Mm,
more times. So the amount of special operations guys that kill
mhm.
themselves is ridiculous. And there's
Oh
no
man.
signs. It's not like these guys have amazing lives. Everything's going awesome. And then all of a sudden they kill themselves.
Mhm,
And what they've connected the dots to CTE and operator syndrome
mhm,
is an extreme impulsivity of like,
mhm.
why not? They just
Yeah.
do it.
Mhm,
And the impulsivity of, because you're chasing this crazy high. Like I used to fly in helicopters and jump out of helicopters and like
mhm.
do all these crazy things. And now it's like life is numb. Like, what is
Yeah,
this?
like a
Like
complete
nothing's
stop.
exciting. Nothing.
Yeah.
It's exactly. So,
Mhm,
the same instance in that is like a lot that even that,
mhm,
yes, there's common denominators with the fetal alcohol syndrome, but there's also that, like I said, I think CT is way more rampant than
okay.
we realize. And
Mhm,
then for that, it's that feeling, that extreme, that impulsivity. And
mhm,
sometimes what I've found with working with folks is when they just understand that, or even if it's that, if they know like, hey, your mom drank when you were a baby, your brain is wired different. This is what it is.
mhm,
So
mhm,
sometimes in that moment, if I could just tell myself,
mhm.
you're a little off, like let's give yourself a call timeout or something. And
Right.
physically, hey, timeout, bud. I think that's something that's helped me a lot.
Mhm.
And then, the other thing I'll say, I'm sorry, I'm chatting my
Oh,
butt
no,
off,
no, God,
is,
no. Keep
is,
going.
the thing I would feel for a lot of these guys that you're working with
Mhm,
is, you know, I've been sent to the wizard, and you're supposed to go to counseling or whatever.
mhm,
And I hate it. I think it sucks. It's so stupid because I sit with this person that
mhm,
my first question is, and this is just like if I was going to talk to a gang member or something, right?
mhm,
Like the first thing they're going to look at you and they're looking at what you look like. Okay, this is what this guy looks like, or this is who this lady looks like.
mhm.
And then they're automatically going to measure themselves against you because you're supposed to sit here and talk to me about what I've been through. Like,
Mhm,
you don't
mhm.
know shit. If you
Yeah,
weren't a Green Beret, you're not an operator. Like, how do
yeah.
you know what I've done? Like,
Mhm,
you know what I mean? You don't even have the balls to like sit on the side of the helicopter flying around like that, let alone jump out of it and go execute this mission or just
mhm.
whatever it is, right? Or
Yeah,
they're fat and chubby. Automatically not going to listen to them because I'm this badass dude who's in shape, and there's nothing that a fat person can tell me.
yeah,
So that's how your brain as a man is going to think
yeah.
and do automatically. So I think it's important that you have these guys at all these different levels that have been there and done that, that are now able to be the elder, regardless of the path they
Yes.
took. A good one where that's
Yeah.
rocky, that, whatever. They've got to
Mm-hmm.
be able to be that. And my thing is, what I always say is, when I grew up, we had OGs, which stands for original gangsters.
Yes.
And nowadays, what I see is we don't have OGs and those uncles anymore.
Mm-hmm.
We have guys that are my age that dress like they're in their 20s, that listen to 20-year-old music, that conduct themselves like kids instead of conducting themselves like uncles and like OGs did.
Yeah.
Because when I was growing up, those guys didn't listen to our music. They'd be like, you don't know nothing about this, and throw their jams on and dance the way they danced and do whatever, like they had their own style of who they were because of their age and what they did. And we don't do that anymore. It's just so weird to me. So I think it's going to take, it, especially for men, like, you're supposed to be the athletic trainer, and you're going to teach me to play football better, but you never played football,
Yeah.
and you're
I
not this
couldn't agree
jacked
more.
person. Like, what am I supposed to do here? So I don't think people quite understand that with therapy when it comes to particular to men, because women are different. And I think that women look through therapy lens and look through something that's totally different. Whereas guys, it's like, hey, a bunch of guys, a bunch of me and my buddies can go to the mountains and hang out, have an amazing time for 4 or 5 days,
Yeah. Yeah.
relax, bro out. And guess what? We never talk about anybody, like, feeling like, but we kind of do and we kind of don't. And it's just completely different.
Yeah.
But we're going to assess ourselves against the people we're with. So if all my friends I'm out with are these badass cowboys and special forces guys or whatever, the vulnerability there is different. Or the vulnerability a young man's able to have with me because of how vulnerable I'm being with him and the way he looks at my background, and he's worked with me. He's like, damn, this dude's tough as hell. Like, okay. So I think that that's really key. And I challenge, the OGs, the uncles, to be that, to be uncles, to be OGs again, to stand up, to dress how you dress, to be you, to not be this, new version of whatever's popular nowadays. Like, it's okay to do that. And these guys need that, because they're not, like I said, I don't know how to navigate therapy. I don't know what the best advice. I don't know how you find somebody that can work with you in that manner. It's why I always say, like, hard things. Get in the gym, start training jiu-jitsu or kickboxing, and start getting around those people that are willing to do hard shit. I think if you surround yourself, that old saying, if you sit with warriors, the conversation is different. So I don't think
Yeah.
it
I
matters,
agree.
of the mistakes you've made in the past, as long as you're willing to move forward in that way.
Yeah. And that's exactly why I'm calling on the brotherhood,
Yeah.
because I cannot do this alone. And I wish I could name some of my clients right now. I'm like, did you just hear that? Right?
And they know it,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll share this with the guys that are going to listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why I say they know that is because when I was in high school, I was going to play football, and I love football. My dad played football at a college. I mean, I grew up loving to hit things and be hit, and, like, I'm just kind of weird like that. So I knew I was going to play football. My freshman year, I was trying out for the football team, and I knew I was going to make it. I was always playing, all the kids in the neighborhood, guys that were on the team, and eventually would keep playing football. I was running circles around them. So at football practice, there's this guy, I won't say his real name. Well, actually, I don't give a shit. 40 ounce. His name, we call him 40 ounce. And I remember he was this fat little Mexican dude. And, he's kind of he's a big, fat, bigger dude. And he was a lineman. And I want to say he was like a sophomore. He's a year older than me. And he'd played football before. And we were doing a drill. And everybody knew I hit hard. And I murdered him. And I've never been like cheering or being crazy. I just was like, my dad taught me to, like, his favorite thing to do when he played was he would sack the quarterback or make a really good hit on somebody, and he would help him up. And he would say, and he would try to help him up. He'd say, I'm number 54. I'll be with you all night. So I always took this, like, very gentleman, respectful, like, and the coolest thing I love about combat sports in football or other combat sports is like you can dish it out, but you got to be able to take it as well, and because they're going to be coming for you. I land a shot on you, you're coming to land a shot on me. So anyway, he was like, just gay about it and was saying he was with Sanchucos and all this, and I'm gonna kill you, my brother's gonna get you, and his brother played varsity, and then I was like, whatever. And after that in the locker room, his brother, like, they were acting like they were gonna fight me, and nothing happened. It was like they were trying to punk me, and nothing didn't work. His brother never showed up, and he didn't want to fight me. So the next day, we're everybody at school was like, and I forget the other guy's name. They're like, yeah, the Sanchucos are here. Like, they're looking for you, this and that. And I didn't know, like, where I grew up in Las Vegas, we did have a lot of gang affiliation and a lot of things, but sometimes I didn't know if it was real or not. Cause you would have guys that would claim a set or say things and you're like, I mean, like, I don't think he's a real gangster. Like, I don't know. But then there's also like, I mean, it could be, it could be a real gangster. So they were saying like, hey, if he catches you playing football or out there, like, he's going to shoot you or whatever. And I was walking home that day from school with one of my buddies, and a truck rolled up on us, and the two brothers and a bunch of guys were in there, and they jumped out, and he pulled a pistol out, and he was like, I told you, if you come to football practice, I'm going to kill you, blah, blah, blah. And I just was like, like, standing there, and he has this gun pointing at, like, he showed me he has a gun, like, in his pants. My buddy took off running, and then I was just like, okay, man, like, I was trying to figure out like what move I was going to make. Like, if he goes for this gun, like, I'm going to go for him. Like, I'm not going to run because then he'll shoot me. So I'm just going to stand here, like, and I trained. So I was like, I'm down to fight this dude. And there's a bunch of guys in the car, and they basically, they punked me and was like, yeah, Sanchucos, this, that, and other. So for like that day that happened, when they pulled the gun out on us, my buddy, he like told his mom, he told his parents, like, transferred him to a completely different school. He ended up going to Las Vegas High, like, having to get taken to school. And I always grew up where it was like, I got to handle my own business. Like, what am I going to do to go tell my dad that, like, some Sanchucos pulled a gun on me? And now, like, while I'm walking to school. And so I made up some shit about quitting football. I basically, like, just trashed my grades, didn't play football. And they physically chased me. Like, I had to, like, find different ways to walk around from school. They were looking for me all the time. They would pull up on me, and like, they never caught me. I had to take off running. I had a couple little fist fights with some of the Sanchucos, all like the younger guys every now and then. So I that was kind of my first like time that kind of happened. And on my street, we had guys that were gang affiliated in Donna Street Crips, and they were the black guys that lived on my street. And basically they were like, we have your back, like, told me what was going on, because I didn't tell anybody. My buddy that was there with me saw it, and he like just left, ghosted. He was never to be seen again by anybody at school, really, because he was scared for his life. And so I kind of told him after like, a couple of months of like walking the longest way around through houses and stuff to get home. And they were like, what the hell's going on? So they were like, hey, we'll have your back, basically, like, you come with us. So I basically just started going to school with them, because the older brother was a Donna Street Crip, and they looked out for me. And then I had really gotten into martial arts then. I started kickboxing. I was ranked top 10 in the world from age 15 and 16. And then from 17 to 25-year-old ring, I was also ranked top 10 in the world. And so my kickboxing really elevated, and I really focused in on that. And those guys, so my sports stuff, it was kind of like the guys, my black friends, I played a lot of basketball with them, and they didn't really, I didn't have to mess with the gang stuff with them, because I kickboxed, and the older brother, his name was Keon. He really looked out for all of us youngsters, and he didn't want none of us in the gang, and he didn't want us to have to go to Northtown and pretend we were hard. Like, we're all tough kids, but like, he looked out for us, and his little brother was playing football and good at football. And so it's kind of a cool thing to have those guys like kind of look out for me as like bigger brothers, if you will.
Right.
And then, that was kind of like the first time with this gang. And then, fast forward like a year later or something, we called ourselves Rebels. And basically what it was like, a bunch of us at that time period in the 90s, we would dress like greasers and we would call ourselves rebels, and that's how we dressed. And it was kind of like a Hispanic and white, a little bit of white scene, mostly Hispanic, and a lot of the, like me being native, like I just kind of looked like that. I fall into the brown culture, so there's a lot of that. But we were just like party crews, basically. We weren't a gang, but the guys I ran with, they were all gang affiliated. They had a bunch of cousins and stuff in 28th Street gang. So we know all the little things in high school of all of our fights and craziness, and we had some 28th Street, in and out of that stuff. And then we used to play football every Thursday, tackle football in the summertime. We play rebels against gangsters. And that was when I really got my first taste of like the OG life of these older guys pulling up in all their cars. Like the old vatos would come watch us play. And I really saw this like hierarchy of respect and like how the structure of a man was built, where like it was rooted in your toughness. The OGs really held the young guys who were playing football against us. They didn't allow them to be, to show weakness, but they also didn't allow them to like jump us or do anything that wasn't fair. Like you're playing football and you
Old
get hit
school.
hard. Like, yeah, like he hit you hard, you get up and you hit him hard again. Like you don't swing on him or act that way. And I think it was like almost their way. And they used to play these tackle football games all the time. 28th Street did, because those are kind of way of doing a warrior game and teaching some like values to their guys of like, hey, like I respect you more if you're willing to not be punked, stand up for yourself. Yeah, you're gonna get jumped, whatever the case is, but be in this like kind of teaching that warrior culture, and in a bad way, because yes, it's a gang, but in a good way, because, and I understand the reason why I'm saying I understand these young men who've been there is because, I was taken care of by those guys. There's other times when other people have, been trying to hurt me and my friends or pulled a gun out on us or been at drive-by shootings and stuff. And those guys looked out for us or prevented those things from happening. Met some with girls and so-and-so is going to get their brother and this and that. And he's in this gang. And all that happened to me. And those guys really looked out for us. And I think it was because they respected our ability to play tackle football with them and like not be scared of it, So the reason why I share the kind of the two stories about the gangs and like how I was affiliated with this one gang in particular in high school is because I do understand, I was a part of a team. I was a part of the best team that there is in the world. I was a Green Beret in Special Forces. Like there is no team that operates at a higher level. So I understand these young men looking for a warrior's cause and a code and something to do and to be a part of something and to be treated, like you won a victory, like you did something awesome because you were tough enough to fight another gang member, or you did this, or you had the balls to sell drugs, or, everything's hyped up to be, the better you are at something. And if that's all that you're a product of your environment and you're trying to just be the best version of yourself that you can be. And if you're a gang member, the best version of being a gang member is to continue down this path of, destruction eventually. So I think it's very important that the guys that are the OGs, that are mentors, to be able to understand this and talk about it. And I was not in a gang. I don't know what it's like to be in a gang in that way as a gang member. I want to make sure guys understand that, but I do understand that mentality. I understood why my friends were in gangs. I get it, but I also have friends that, like one of my best friends growing up, his big sister, had kids, and she couldn't even let, her brother have her kids in the car and drive around Las Vegas with him because so many guys were trying to kill him. So it's like, there is that, and that same guy, my friend, I called him a cousin, in high school. He ended up, getting locked up and going to prison for a while, but now he's a mechanic and he's running a mechanic shop and he's riding Harleys and fixes lowriders and does all the cool OG shit with his lowrider bikes and his lowrider Harleys and his cars. And he's a family man. And I think that, it's important for us to talk about it and these guys to share their story because there feels like there's no light at the end of the tunnel. And if all you know is thug shit, then you're not a bitch. You're tough. Like you always feel like someone's coming at your manhood, and anything that if you're questioned in any way or you feel vulnerable in any way, the only way you know how to defend yourself is with violence.
Yes.
Violence is not always the answer. Sometimes it's the only answer, and I understand that. But if all you know is to, you're basically, what I look at it is with all men, we are this little weak creature and we're just wearing this armor, and I'm showing you how badass my armor looks and what I've done. But the reality of it is like, we are this like vulnerable individual inside, and our insecurities are going to show even more and more and more. And we try to, be more brash and have more armor and do that. So these guys that really, went to prison, that grew up in the gang life, every single thing they know is about having their manhood tested and showing that they're not weak. So it's very hard for them to feel that they resonate with somebody. Yeah. So it's key that the guys that you work with, that are the OGs, that have been there, share their story, be a little vulnerable, still be tough. Hey, sometimes some of these guys are going to need to get handsy. Sometimes these guys are going to need to do what they do as men, and that's okay, but we need to understand, how can I, my insecurities of me lacking as a man, how can I work on those, still be a tough guy, still be a manly guy, and still be this warrior that I, was for this gang, but how can I be a warrior for like myself and my family now with that same perspective?
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for that. Definitely highlighting that piece as well. I'll probably use that in some of my sessions. No, I'm serious.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, no, for sure, because that's what I hear a lot, is like that survivalist, that warrior spirit. However, they can carry a sword, but they need to keep it sheathed until they actually have to use it. Like, yes, absolutely. Men need to be dangerous. They absolutely need to be dangerous. But in some of the cases that I see, it's just so disorganized, and it's just they're at one another. Like, we've got guys that on the same team that are killing one another. So it's just like acts of violence for no greater purpose whatsoever.
Yeah, and it really, like I said, I feel like they feel like it's an attack on their manhood, who they are as a man.
Yeah,
it's hard to step back and navigate that and see how we can make a better choice that's not this anger-filled rage thing, or violence or whatever. Yes. How can we navigate that? And one of the things I like to say to a lot of the street guys that are very street smart and have dealt with that, and obviously working in anti-human trafficking that I'm dealing with, I think it's a terrible analogy, but that like old school kind of funny pimp culture that like hip hop had, and like the way pimps in the 70s and the guys talk. They were these, that Romeo pimp, like they will talk. The reason why these girls work for them is because of the mouth on them. They talk. And the skill set, charisma, and the skill set that I say that was always really popular in the gang culture, the inner city or whatever. It's like, whether it's the Mexican, Native, the Indian, the black guys, the Asians, the Filipino, didn't matter. It was like the swag and the ability to talk to women. It was like to be this like playboy type of guy, to have that. And I think that basically what they're learning is how to manipulate people and undermine things and coerce and do all this stuff. But if you can take that same kind of swag, that same kind of like conversation you have, that you want to, kind of corruptly do something wrong, if you take that, what and that's kind of goes along with that gangster mindset, right? Like, there's, what do they do? Like, they want to be with girls and they want to make money and they, whatever. So if you can take that kind of that swaggy, manipulative, talk any girl out of her underwear type of attitude that they know is kind of rooted in the street culture, you can use that for positivity to also influence in a completely another direction. So there's ways to be able to, like you said, keep your sword sheathed until you need to use it. So everything doesn't have to attack you as this vulnerable man. There's ways to use that swaggy attitude to navigate it and be funny about it, or play it off, or do things where you can navigate situations differently through your verbal jujitsu, on your brain, on your tongue, your gift of gab. And a lot of these guys that have these street smarts have that. They understand that gift of gab and that kind of that pimp
Mhm.
language, if I know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I
Um,
totally get it. They've learned how to navigate. Absolutely. Some of
yeah,
these
so
guys
there's
are highly intelligent.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So I think
Yes.
that there's ways that you can engage them to utilize their street smarts and things that they've learned and done in a positive direction. And my analogy to that is like, the things that I learned running the streets of Las Vegas, the trouble I got into, the gang stuff, the fighting. Um, those are all things that really help mold me and make me a really good Green Beret because I have street smarts. I have a lot of experience that other guys don't. I've been in situations that most people would never put themselves in. And those experiences actually gave me a skill set that I was able to utilize later on in life that I still use to this day, that I still use to navigate people, to judge people, and when I say judge, I don't mean in that way. I mean to, analyze people, look at them and is this person, to evaluate them, if I will. If a dog walks like a duck, talks like a duck, it's a duck. I'm
Yeah.
using that street smarts that I've learned to do these kind of evaluations and process information and not put myself in vulnerable positions. And
Hmm.
it's funny. It's like, why do like gangsters like to back into parking spaces and the little funny things? There's reasons for that. So they can get out of their tactically parking. They don't want to be locked in a certain spot. I know gangsters that only make right-hand turns because they don't ever want to turn left to be shot on the driver's side. They don't ever want anybody to pull up on their passenger side. So if they're always in the right-hand lane and make right turns everywhere, the
Yeah.
only threat will come from the left. So whether that's a stupid tactic or a good tactic,
Hmm.
but there's people who use street smarts to be able to navigate what they're doing.
Hmm.
And it doesn't mean you dump it. It's not a skill. It's a skill set. It's definitely worth navigating. Just like somebody that's from a massive city, whether that's a really clean, amazing city like Tokyo, or it's a crazy city where you can get robbed and stabbed at any moment like New York City.
Right.
The people that navigate those cities know the efficiency of it. They know how to go. They know what to do. They know the ins and outs, the rules of the road, if you will. That is street smarts. It might not be the ghetto, drug dealing, that side of the street smarts, but it is. And I think that those guys need to be able to figure out how we harness a lot of these skill sets we already possess with this warrior mindset, with this brashness of not being, I'm a man. Okay. Yeah. You can defend yourself. You can be tough, but also how do we use our street smarts to navigate where I don't have to be tough, where I can see things coming. Now I'm like, nah, I'm good. Like, let me figure out how to navigate something, and I've been doing that. I started doing that when I was 15 years old, navigating the streets I was on so I didn't get shot walking home from school. So
Yeah.
those are the same skill set that I was able to use. And, I've had guys chasing me in cars since I was 15 years old. So the same thing when I'm in Iraq, jumping walls and hiding in bushes and doing my thing and doing what I did as a special forces guy. Like I've done this before. I've had people looking for me like this.
Yeah.
So I think there's ways to do that. And I'm sorry, I just keep
Yeah.
talking.
Oh
I
God,
drank a bunch of
don't be
caffeine
sorry, please, please. No, no, no. That's why I had you on. And and like I had said to you before too, my sessions get a lot of leadway when I actually bring in my conversations that I've had with former military. There's
yeah.
this brotherhood, this warrior spirit that really ignites in them in a way where I see the light go on.
Yeah.
And this is why, exactly why, Jeremiah, I wanted to have you
Yeah.
on because
Well, I know that I'm big on I love history, warrior
mhm,
history in particular.
me too.
And I don't know if all gangs, but I do know that the biker gangs were formed from the soldiers from World War II that
Yes,
came back with their
yes.
motorcycles, wanting a sense of belonging, wanting
Mhm.
that brotherhood, and continued it. And even the formations and the way they ride, the way they address each other, a lot of those things is very militarily. And
Very,
what I saw on 28th Street was a very military organized structure.
yes.
When so and so talks, no one else talks, and
Yeah.
yes, they get it done. And I think that is something that um, it does resonate with them because they are looking for that same thing, and their organizations are definitely rooted in that military-esque way. It doesn't, and when I say that, I think people can kind of misconstrue that too. And not necessarily just like the Army or the Marine Corps,
Mm-hmm.
but think of, warriors in the past 200 years ago. How did they structure themselves? How did they train? How did they look out for each other? It's the same thing that a gang is, or these guys that run together in these really tough neighborhoods that not quite a gang, but kind of know what they're doing, how they take care of each other. So I think that is important to highlight, and for them to look at it through that lens of like, that warrior culture, it's okay to have. We want that warrior culture. We want you to have that. We need you to be able to now pick something to stand up for. What I've found to be within the criminal, if you will, is that a lot of those guys still have a code, when it comes to kids and women and some of those things. And I'll say this because I want people to understand this. It really sucks. I hate when I see that some sexual predator was sentenced to prison, and then everyone says like, "Oh yeah, the guys are going to get him," and you know what? They will. Whether it's the Mexican gang, the Indian gang, the black gang, the white gang, the Aryan Brotherhood, whatever, somebody will, because that is unacceptable in any man's world. However, now what they don't look at is me being this young kid from East Las Vegas who's in 28th Street, and now I'm in 28th Street. I go in for armed robbery. I'm trying to protect myself. I'm in 28th Street. I got to defend myself. I get more time because I got in this fight. And now the way I need to prove myself to the OGs is I need to take out this fucking child rapist that raped one of the OG's nieces. So I'm going to kill him, and I'm the one who kills him. And everybody knows I kill him. So, I go in there. I shank him in his cell. I take care of it. And guess what? Now I just added, 60 years to my sentence because I'm proving myself. And it does suck that we're asking these warriors that are stuck in this place, and to not call them warriors is stupid, because they are very dangerous men. They do know violence. They know violence. Like only men who know violence truly know violence. So you now stick them in this place where there is a code. There is rules and regulations to how things are run and the way things are conducted. So it really upsets me to look at it from that way of thinking like, and part of me is like, good for him. Like he got what he got, I do get that. But the other side of it is like, it does kind of suck. It is pretty fucked up that now,
Backwards.
We're asking these warriors to handle our problem instead of society physically figuring out a way to do that. And like I said, consequences need to be bigger, in my opinion, than what they are. And there shouldn't be people that are allowed to do things to kids and get away with it in any form at all,
Yeah, agreed. And I can't count on two hands how many times I've heard that story. The ones who had to actually go in there and do that particular deed. However, a lot of the men that I work with too, the way that things have gone for them in regaining their masculinity with the violence and the crime is because that same incident happened to them when they were a kid.
Absolutely.
And for a young boy, that was very confusing, and it robbed them of any autonomy and manhood that they thought. And now they're just fighting to regain it. And so this conversation is through the roof. It's, it really is. I'm really stoked to be able to share this content now with some of my guys.
Heck yeah. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like I said, I hope, I don't want it to sound, negative towards your work or the guys, and anything that I've, talked about or told them, I just look at it through also what they need to understand too is like, I made some mistakes, like no one's perfect, but I've also now I'm, full circle. I'm a girl dad. I'm working with these people. I'm trying to help these women and these children and everything else. So the reality of it too is like, you can either continue to be the person that somebody like me has no respect for, does not care about, and will squash you like a bug in a heartbeat, or you can change that and you can now do something to walk a different path, because a lot of these guys are dads and they have lives and
They
they
are.
have things, and it could be your daughter, it could be,
Mm-hmm.
your sister and your mother. We all have mothers regardless of, how they treated us or what. So when we look at those kind of things, it's like for them, they need to be able to look at it through this like ultimate gentleman thing of like pick one thing. And if your thing is like, I just want to figure out a way to like make sure that like there's something for kids in my environment or my community. And if the only job you can get is cutting logs down, then you go cut logs down, and then you go
Exactly.
volunteer at the feral horse center or something that makes
Yeah.
sure that those
Soup
kids have
kitchen.
feral horses or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. You've got to pick something to be able to try to a mission set for you to be able to go on and accomplish. And a lot of those things can be accomplished through, physical fitness. Set some physical fitness goals for yourself.
Yep.
Train, train. And all those guys are in prison, no prison workouts and all those things work. They're awesome. Like get after it, train, do, continue to hone yourself, but also try to pick something that you can move forward to in a positive direction that influences the people around you. And I think that creates purpose, and we all need some purpose with our life. And it's easy to get caught up in the wheel of like trying to pay bills and make the money to do this and do that. And if you don't have a purpose that helps drive you, and it doesn't have to be all the time and full time and something crazy, but I think it'd be really important for these guys as they're trying to move forward with their lives. Yes, get stable. Yes, pick a hard job, get after all those things, but also find something that you believe in, that you want other people to believe in, that you want to help others, be better at or whatever. And even if it's just, starting with social media and telling your story and doing X, Y, and Z or whatever it is, it's like, do those things because, you don't underestimate the impact that you're going to have on other people while you're impacting yourself and moving forward. Because, the only way that you're ever going to be able to be right, I feel like we have this thing where we feel like we have to right our wrongs, and it doesn't necessarily need to be on this like even playing field. But I do think there is some tit for tat when it comes to that. And the more like good check marks, the more stars we all get. We all like being doing good things. It feels good to do that. And I feel like if you can kind of rewire some of that in your brain to have those chemical and those dopamines and those good feelings when you do something good for people without them asking you, without, even if they don't say thank you or they don't recognize it and all the other things in society. But it's okay for you to do good things and feel that in your heart, because I feel that way, that path is the right path for you to be able to continue down to deal with all the things that you are dealing with. So if you pick a purpose, if you find something and some goals, like push forward. Otherwise, you're just your wheels are gonna spin every time you get told no at a job, or every time you stumble and fall, or every time you see some drugs and you want to shoot them, or every time you get whatever it is, and there's nothing to drive you. You're going to take the easy way out until you continuously do it the hard way. If you don't, the hard way is going to be the hard way. And you know what? You need to get fucking really good with accepting that everything is hard. And then once you accept that nothing's easy and everything's hard, and it's why I tell guys to train hard, you should be able to train your body where you physically make yourself like throw up and puke because your brain's willing to tell yourself not to quit, and your body physically can't go on anymore. Men need to know that, just hard shit. So if you continuously make the hard thing it gets easier and it gets fun. You learn how to kind of suffer in that. You learn that like suffering's kind of fun. It's funny. It's miserable. It's all these things. But if you constantly choose the easy way out, you will always, like I said, you'll get caught or ride it. You'll drink another drink. You'll buy those drugs. You'll hang out with those guys again. You'll start to go down the red flags are going to be popping up in front of you. And if you're unable to create boundaries with yourself and others around you to keep those, it's like bowling with the bumper bowler on, right? Like you got to set. And if I set this mission, if I figure out what I call it, my purpose is, and I can establish one, and I can set some right and left limits. Now I can kind of bump myself around and stay on that path. If you don't set any boundaries, you're going to end up in the gutter. Promise you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I really liked what you said about just like that kind of that ledger, right? We need more plus the check marks over on the plus side. And it does
Yeah.
balance out. It's universal law, right?
Yeah.
Like the ripple effect. So, no, that was great.
Absolutely.
Thank you. How we
Yes, ma'am. I appreciate it.
how we doing for time? We did
I'm
great.
good. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, we did great. I am going to probably wrap up though. I'm actually
Yes, ma'am.
on my way to a celebration of life. We just
Thank
had
you.
a woman in Merritt here, 45 years old, a mother of six.
Yeah.
Her husband went into a rage and killed her.
Wow. It's super
So
sad.
I'm on my way to another funeral of domestic violence. And so this
Yeah.
conversation couldn't have come at a better time.
Yeah.
But it's just, yeah, yeah, we
Yeah.
definitely need to raise awareness.
Like, I think that is a good way also to, one of the things I always say to ladies
Hmm.
and is, it'll never happen to me until it happens
Mm,
to you, and I think that
yeah,
that's, a big thing that people don't see,
yeah.
um, is, that feeling. So, definitely prayers to the family and, those kids, they're
Yeah.
definitely,
Yeah, we
lives
have
changed
six kids
forever.
now that don't have either parent now, right?
Yeah,
And their
exactly.
innocent love for their father,
Hmm.
and unfortunately there was warning signs
Yeah.
and there was arrests, there was a file and all of the things, but until you are ready to actually take that next step and to remove yourself, there's not a lot of resources like, well,
Yeah.
just like
No,
law
absolutely.
enforcement, they
Yeah.
their hands are tied
The
too.
hands are tied. Yep.
Yeah.
They are.
Yeah.
They absolutely
Awesome.
are. Yeah.
Awesome, Jeremiah. Did you have any last words though? Oh, wait a sec. How
Yes,
do
ma'am.
our viewers find you?
Oh, my personal social media on
Mhm.
Instagram is Jeremiah underscore Blackbeard. And
Mhm.
then War Party Movement and War Party Ranch on Instagram. And then our websites are just warpartymovement.com and warpartymovement.org. They'll send you to, and once you get on one website, you can see it all. But
See it
all
all.
of
Yeah.
our, yeah,
Yeah. No, and I will include all of those links too. Okay.
yes,
So yeah,
ma'am.
thank you so much, Jeremiah. It was a real pleasure meeting you. And like I said, reach out if you have anything that I can help you with. And that's a wrap.
Yes, ma'am. Same to
Yeah.
you. I
Okay.
appreciate you.